All right, guys, today we got Keith Ray. He's down here for the reunion. This is pre-reunion, so, anything that he has done, we don't know about yet. So, It's pre-reunion, so whatever happens after, you may set the world on fire with a new Mustang, what would it be, mod motor record, potentially?
Yeah, that's the plan.
The 399, 390... It'd have to be a 397, right? Or 6 to break the record? What is it, 98?
I'd have to go like a 98 if you class the Coyote and the mod motor together, like with Brett.
Yeah, that's what I guess you would, maybe?
It all depends on who you ask. Brett and I laugh about it all the time, so it's just like, it is what it is. I still got the quarter mile, which is nice. Like, we've been 619 in the quarter mile. So, and now we're running the Lockup. So Pro Tour got me a Lockup. Actually, Doug Cook just stole one of mine. I let him borrow one of my Lockups. He's good to me. Now I'm on Team Rife, Team TBM Motion. Like, that dude just completely hooked my car completely up.
Yeah.
We converted my entire car, all 3 transmissions, my entire car, everything, TBM and Rife.
Yeah, Doug's awesome. I was helping him put in his trans last night, actually, and it's a pain in the ass on that car. I don't know, like, there's like no room. You could just fit like a piece of paper in between the Rife sensor block and like his chassis.
Oh yeah.
And then with the Lockup it adds like an inch off the bell housing, and it's a whole thing. So you build engines, mostly mod motors and Coyotes.
Yep.
Now
that's all I do is just mod motors and Coyotes.
Okay.
Now.
So and then you race all different series.
Like I race like Warrior Outlaws up in like the Maryland area.
Yeah, Northeast area.
Yep. I used to run a lot more LDR, but with some of the weights, like I'm not going to add like 200 pounds to my car to run LDR. Like, it's just some of the weights in that class just aren't where they need to be. Like for a small block twin turbo to be like 3,100 pounds.
Yeah.
Especially, and I'd be okay with that if I was billet. Like it's cast block, cast heads.
Stock block?
Stock blocks. Yeah, because on the 5.4 there is no aftermarket. It's 11 to 14 is the year that I get to choose from.
So it's a 5.4.
Yeah.
What does that come out of originally?
GT500, 11 to 14.
Okay, so you got 11 to 14 GT500 in a New Edge Mustang.
Correct. Yeah. So it's like if you got an 11, 12 GT500, it's just a 5.4, and a 13, 14, it'd be the Trinity.
Interesting.
The block architecture is the same. We do some modifications to it to make it live. A lot of them with mine and all my customers. But stock block,
modifications to the actual block itself, supports on them?
Yeah, like we sleeve it. I do really big side bolts because the side bolts are what hold the mains in place. Because you can't go bigger on the stud because you don't have enough register.
Yeah.
So they have 10 millimeter studs. That's all you get. You can't go to 11 millimeter. You can't go to 7.6. You can't go up. The side bolts come in at 9 millimeter. And they're real like when you torque them to 45 foot-pounds, they don't squeeze. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
So we do a 7/16 coarse thread, big bolt, and we torque the side bolts to 80. And when we do, it squeezes and yanks the mains out to where we got to skin the caps, recut them. But ever since we did that 3 years ago, haven't heard a main bearing since.
Really? That sounds like a ton of work. So I guess it does.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, even to figure that out, because it sounds like you kind of had to come up with this.
Yeah, there are some people like John at AccuFab that did a 10 millimeter. The problem with doing a 10 millimeter, when you go from a 9 to a 10 millimeter, you don't get rid of all the parent threads of a 9 millimeter. So you only get about 55 to 60% thread engagement because there's still the 9 millimeter thread still in there.
Yep.
You have to step up to the 7/16 coarse thread to get full thread engagement, to get completely new hole to rethread in the main cap.
So pardon my ignorance a little bit here, but why the coarse thread versus a fine thread? It's just the next size Does it bite better or?
No, because there's a lot of thread engagement. Personally for me, if I hurt that main cap, I can then thread it to a fine thread because the fine thread is bigger than the coarse as far as on the drill bit size. So I can reform those threads if I need to in an emergency to run a fine thread bolt, and I keep fine threads in the trailer if for whatever reason. But but like I said, luckily we haven't hurt anything. It keeps the block nice and stable between that sleeve and it, just like you do a Coyote.
Yep. Iron block at least though, so it's
aluminum.
Oh, are they aluminum?
Yeah, they're aluminum. Okay. Only that stretch is aluminum. Oh. Now the 4GT is aluminum too, but it's factory dry sump. It doesn't have the oil returns. Doesn't have the starter pocket. Like you got to do a lot of modifications to that block.
It's also weird because there's not Like, they didn't make that many cars with that block, so it's
just like, those 4 years, just that car.
Because Coyote, there's trucks and everything under the sun. There's a billion GTs.
They're everywhere. Yeah.
But that is kind of like a unique thing. Can you just call up Ford and order one?
So it was about 2 years ago. Blocks were like $5,500 for these things because there was a shortage. They didn't exist. Ford wasn't making. Then all of a sudden, it was miraculous. They found like 200 blocks. So now the blocks are back down to like $2,300.
Huh.
So just miraculously, they just
Is there a little conspiracy there? Like Ford was kind of like hoarding them.
I think Tasca bought all of them.
Okay.
But I get them from my local dealer.
You could just
I just order them straight through my dealer.
Huh.
My local Ford dealer.
I mean, that's a pretty reasonably priced block. I'd imagine
3,000 horsepower.
After that kind of machine work, though, it becomes a more expensive
It's
block.
about a 10 to, just like a Coyote. Now, there's a little bit more with that because we do the big 9/16 Hemi head studs as well because you only got 10. Unfortunately, that's just 4 guys. We've been blessed or cursed with 10 head studs. That's all we ever get. But the 9/16s, they torque to 145. It's top fuel, O-ringed, top fuel hooped. Kevin at TKM actually does he makes my rings for me.
Okay.
Just because it's just easier.
Factory cylinder head on that?
Yeah.
Ford GT?
Ford GT head.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those
Ported
are...
by Liver Noise, who does our porting.
Oh, interesting.
Used to be Fox Lake, then Fox Lake went out of business, unfortunately. Ron was awesome dude. But Liver Noise does all my heads.
You didn't want to take that in-house?
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
By the time I'd have to retrofit a machine and all that. It's not worth it.
What do you do for intake manifold on that? Because aren't those cars a little weird with like intake manifold stuff? Like, I've always seen people run custom ones on.
I run a custom Hogan because I do a lot of class racing, so I can't have an intercooler on mine because it's considered I'm twin turbo, but it's considered dual power adder on M1. So
Methanol is considered a dual power adder?
If methanol and intercooler. Or twin turbo, methanol, you're not allowed an intercooler.
Interesting.
Because they consider the intercooler a second.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of like Dom D. Donato, I'm good friends with Dom, and Mark Meering.
Yeah.
Those guys, they've actually gone away from the. So X275, it was like a gray area. If the intercooler came factory in the chassis, they could run it.
Yeah, so if you have
with
a GT500,
M1. Yes.
you
I
can
couldn't
run
in
like
my
a brick
Fox
style.
body, my X275 Fox body car, I couldn't run it because it didn't come factory in that chassis.
Huh.
So, but Dom and I were talking in Alabama at Steel for Radio Outlaws. Was it 3-4 weeks ago? That he actually took it out because they were seeing such a huge pressure drop across it. No matter what size, whether you put the big Kenny Bell brick in it, the new VMP brick, it's just not because it'd be essentially the same intercooler that's on like Garrett's.
Yeah.
It's on
that deal.
Yeah.
Same now he went away from the 5.4.
He put a Coyote
in it.
Yeah. So that's one intake manifold a lot of guys do. And then there's a couple companies that build a hat for the factory intake, to do a turbo car. But I like the Hogan stuff. I do a
That's
bottom
one thing
feed
that
Hogan.
always has thrown me off in those cars because you look at it and every time, like any Mustang, I know Yandro, it was always the same thing. You looked at it and you're like, this looks like somebody just made this intake for this car. Like you have an LS and there's 10,000 intake options.
The one thing you can do, like MMR and a couple other companies make adapter plates because the width is about the same as a Coyote. So you can actually get adapter plates and run a Coyote intake on the 5.4. But then you get into, the air's taking different turns and it's hard to blend it perfect, so it's just not worth it.
Well, there's rules about that too, is what intake you can have if it can be sheet metal or billet or
depending on the class.
Depending on so that's even crazy in itself. I mean,
like I can't remember if Ultra calls that out anymore. There used to be a couple classes that, depending your weight package was based on what intake manifold you had.
Yeah, that's how they kind of just put you into a different spot. But that's such a weird distinction because
and that's where a lot of people...
You don't really know what it makes for power or how it flows.
And a lot of times, like an 18 or like a Boss manifold flows just as good as your high-dollar Hogan. It's just the Hogan's going to last longer. It's going to be able to take more power, as far as boost, manifold pressure, stuff like that. And it's just going to be more rigid. It's not going to flex. You don't have to worry about it cracking or anything like that.
And like a cast single-plane manifold on an LS makes... great power, and they're pretty simple.
Exactly.
And they look like nothing. They look like your dad's, big block.
Yep. And that's the thing. Like, I chose an engine platform that pretty much doesn't exist. There's only a handful of us that run this, and that's why there's never been like the development of a billet block, or there's never been, there's a lot. And it's got a big stroke in it too. It's got a 4.165 stroke.
Okay.
So the piston speed, it's really hard on pistons until, it took me a couple years of racing this thing hard because I spin it to 94, 95, 9600.
And how far it's coming down?
Yeah, it actually pulls it clear down out of the sleeve.
Yeah. You start to get some wobble at the bottom.
So the one thing we did to solve that, and well, the thing that makes it worse, Brett and I were just talking about this, is with the aluminum rod, because it's such a big stroke, you have to take right in the center of the sleeve, right where it needs all the support, you have to take it out.
Yeah.
You have to, in order to clear the big end of the rod. So what I do.
Right there, it has to neck down.
Yep.
Just to clear the rod.
Just to clear the rod. So I got to put big notches in the bottom of the sleeve. Now what I do is I put all mine on a 2-inch Chevy or like a Honda, like a 199 Honda Journal. So I can shrink the big end of the rod, slow down bearing speed. It's like a twofold. I slow down bearing speed, the bearing runs cooler, but then I also make my big end of my rod a little bit smaller because even if it's 40 thousandths, because I'm going from a 2087 bearing to a 2-inch bearing. So I can make up 40 thousandths.
So just doing that slows down the bearing speed?
Yeah, so when you go to a smaller rod journal, you slow down the bearing speed.
Okay. Huh.
It's less time, per rotation.
Yeah.
It's less surface area that it has to go across. So
that's pretty trick.
Yeah, so we do that because just like Joe does, all your clearances are based on what you're doing with the engine. So like for me, the bearing clearance I run, I'm not going to put it in a customer street engine. Like it's loose, but we pump a lot of oil in. It's got a 15 quarts total capacity between the tank and what's in the engine and everything.
And you probably have a good dry sump system.
Yeah, it's got a big Aviate on it.
Feeds everything needed.
Yeah, and it's got a 130-pound spring that's shimmed to make. When I fire it up, it maxes out a 150 sensor when I fire the car up.
Oh, wow.
But that's the only way to make these things live because I'm trying to rip the crank out the bottom of this thing, just like Brett is. Like that crank's just floating in there. And we just have to.
I have a bell for Brett.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, it's they're not much different from a Coyote. Now the Coyote lasts because it's a square. The Coyote's very square of an engine as far as, stroke.
It's like a true block.
Yes, it literally is. Whereas mine, it's a 4.165 stroke, 3.552 factory bore. I run a Coyote bore actually just because of ring pack availability.
Oh, okay.
So I run like a 3.620, 3.630 bore. It makes it like a 340 cubic inch. But we're trying. I have a couple engines that I'm doing now that I'll be running probably at World Cup. If the cranks come in, I'm taking a bunch of stroke out so I can spin it to 10,000. Just because my biggest problem is I can spin it to 96, 9,700, and it lives. I got no issue with that. But the faster I go, even with a lockup, I need to start knocking rear gear out. I don't want to do that. So I can change the crank, a little less stroke, to where I can slow the piston down, pull it out of the bottom of the sleeve less, so it's more reliable in that aspect, and spin it harder. So
I guess that's where it's lucky that you are driver, engine builder, tuner,
everything.
Across the board.
Yeah. Because I get to make all the decisions.
Yeah, and I've noticed that teams kind of work best when everybody's kind of on the same wavelength on that, and you being the guy across the board, is getting it in higher RPM also better to get it more out of torque and more just horsepower, or?
With that stroke, it makes a good bit of torque. Little bit more than a Coyote, not much more, just because they did lack bore space.
And the cams and everything still happy up there?
Yeah. So I work with Todd Warren. And ASVT Cams, he was known as on the forums. And we've done a lot of work over the past 5-6 years, him and I together. And the set of cams we have in now, we just run the hub dyno, trying to work out the lockup, and had an issue with the converter. But, it made almost 2,700 at 52 pounds of boost to the hubs.
Oh, wow.
So with no lockup.
Yeah.
So, and we've pushed, I've been 405 on 50 pounds of boost. So, and we still have a lot to go. Like I said, 88's in the trailer if the 83s run out. So
are they PTE?
No, I'm a Bullseye guy.
Bullseye,
yeah.
88.
I'm really good friends with Bill. I built a really good relationship with him. They're amazing to me. The turbos that are on my car are 4.5, almost 5 years old now.
Oh, wow.
And they just keep going.
Well, now I'm a little bummed that you don't have the weather this weekend.
Yeah. We may have it tomorrow night.
Maybe, yeah.
So if we can, if I can get the lockup to work, like I said, on a 50 pounds of boost when we went 405 at World Cup, and went 619 out the back, and the more I'm up, 300 horsepower, just what I know I have so far, and then once we figure out the lockup, like it'll go.
From what I've seen, Pro Torque has that lockup pretty well dialed in.
Yeah, we had to make some modifications to it. It's a weird conjunction between them and Suncoast. So Suncoast makes like the back half.
Interesting.
And
or diesel.
Pretty much,
diesel mostly.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why Pro Torque and them went together.
Yeah.
Suncoast wanted the lockup, but they wanted it for a Turbo 400.
Yeah.
Joe is very smart. Amazing guy. Joe's been with me since I started
Pro Torque?
racing. Yeah, Joe Rivera. Amazing guy. I call him, I'm one of the, he doesn't, Joe is kind of like stepped away, and Tommy, for the Kundrick that used to work for Mickey Thompson, is kind of like the face of Pro Torque now. Mm-hmm. They've been so good to me. Like, they just, overnighted me 2 lockups, so I had spares.
Two full converters.
Yeah, 2 full. I'm a spares guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
not just like internals, not just stators.
Spares. Yeah,
full deal.
Yeah, that's what Brett and Jim were laughing because I have like, they were talking about stators. I was like, I got like 14, 15 stators. You just let me know what you need.
Yeah.
Especially with Doug, he's good to me. And even if, and that's like, people don't realize like Brett and I are very, very cordial. We love racing one another.
Yeah.
And I'm known for.
You two need to go at it because, he needs the competition. You need the competition. Yeah. You both need the drive to.
Exactly. Like I just drove 18 hours to race Brett.
Yeah.
Like to race and a lot of other fast guys.
It'll be a good class.
Yeah, it's gonna be an awesome class. And
I think that 28-inch tire class will be a really good fit for you.
Yeah.
And your car and then that whole field.
Yeah, it's gonna be really good. And what Victor's doing is amazing. Like the dude is killing it as far as drag racing. Like I laugh because it's like, man, I just wish I lived closer to Bradenton. But my whole family, my daughter, everything, everything's in PA. So
come on, there's no tracks around there though.
I have to drive 5 hours to get to MDIR. That's my closest track.
You saw how close I was.
Yeah, I got one that's 4 miles from my house, but it's just a bracket track. It's not worth it for them to do anything, and it sucks. It's literally 4 miles.
Oh wow.
It's a nice facility, but it's not a radio track. Like
there's a lot of tracks around the country that just don't have the promoter, don't have the.
And it's not worth it for them.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like, I mean, because there's a lot of I'm 45 minutes from Pittsburgh, so there's a lot of cars up there.
Yeah, the Northeast has a lot of fast cars.
Yeah.
Yep, because I'm originally from Long Island, and I follow the Northeast cars a little bit because there's some Ultra Street X275.
Yep.
That stuff kind of started with John Sears up in the Northeast.
Yeah, like that whole
Radial
New England
tires
area.
started up there.
Yep. Yeah, like the New England area, the English town, all that stuff. Like, and my local track, I used to race there, but once I got to the 450, 460 mark, it couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah,
and I've learned a lot since then too, so I could probably go 30s there now. But for me, that you get you just got to turn it down. Well, you can't just turn a 4.0 car down to go 450s. It just doesn't work like that. You have to change the whole combination. I have to change the converter because if I don't hit the converter hard, it's going to drag the engine and strike the tire. Like people just don't understand what goes into making these cars work. Mm-hmm. They don't get it.
Yeah, you'd probably have to do bar changes and
everything
stuff just to make it
I'd have
happy.
to hit the tire so much harder because I can't hit it with power, so I got to hit it with leverage. So a lot of people don't get that, and
I don't get how. I get the concept, but if I saw you start doing it, I'd probably still be lost because there's a lot to it, and if you've never done it before, like I've never.
I've learned a lot. My buddy and I, Eric Hendricks, he's the one that he races my red car in no time. Mm-hmm. It's a single 88 bullseye mod motor, same exact engines are identical. Mm-hmm. That way I can swap. We got 5 of them that if we need to, we can drop a bullet in either car.
Just a few in rotation.
Yeah. And we get 60 to 80 runs out of it. I'll pull it apart, send the pistons line to get coated, put a fresh set of rings and a hone in it, and drop it back in. Wow.
Is that about the same on the rods too then?
Yeah, so like I got a set of rods that have 100, I think the rods that were in the engine that I pulled have like 118 passes on them.
Wow. That's a good amount on aluminum rods. You always hear this like fear mongering of like check your aluminum rods every 20 passes. Like, people are just crazy about it.
Yeah, if you keep an eye on them and if you let them warm up and you don't pound, you don't. What hurts a rod is tire spin, like rev limiter stuff. So, and that's one of the reasons I did, because we had some converter issue on the hub dyno, and we were crushing the rev limiter. It would catch the engine and crush the rev limiter. So I was like, if I'm going to come down here and race, it's going. I put a fresh bullet in it. And like Brett and I were saying, like, we're not ashamed to say, like, we're making 3,000 horsepower out of stock stuff. We're going to have to change bullets.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, I don't care how good of an engine builder you are. We're going to break it. I broke every part in that car, except the secondary chain. I've never broke a secondary chain. But everything else, I broke.
So is this, my ignorance again, the secondary chain on a mod motor, is that the one around the cams?
Yeah, between the two cams.
Okay,
Yep.
between both cams.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good. Look at that. So I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So like crank drives the exhaust drives the intake, essentially.
Makes sense. Yeah. And then it goes to the main. I'm trying to just think of the layout of it. But I get it.
So you got one each side, drives the exhaust. The exhaust, of course, on the back side of it, it's got the little gear that drives the intake.
Adds up. And then there's so much harmonics with.
Yeah. So I do some modifications to the stock factory tensioners, and we sell a lot of them off the website. About 5-6 years ago, I come up with a way to eliminate the pulsation of the tensioner, and it's just a piston spacer, which some have copied since then, but
yes, they do.
And that's the market. It is what it is, but that allows us to spin these engines so hard, and it allows, like, when you're on a two-step, you don't break guides. There's just a couple modifications you do to these things, and they'll live. Like, they're very robust engines. Even the 4.6 stuff, it's a robust engine. It's just a lot of people, when the Coyote come out, everybody just kind of kicked the 4.6 in the corner.
Yeah.
But it's still a very good engine. We've been 440s, with some.
It seems like it's just a parts availability thing.
Yeah. The market's just not there for it. The Coyote's so popular.
Yeah, it's just parts availability. Yep. It's so easy to get cranks for a Coyote. Stock cranks do well. And
that's one of the reasons I won't, my car, they won't have Coyotes in them. Like, could I? Yeah. Like, I have blocks, cranks sitting on the shelf. No problem at all. I can, build it for whatever I need. But for me, it's just, I love the 5.4. I think 5.4 is king.
Yeah.
Period. Like, it has the cubic inch. It's got the torque. I can run the bottom harder. I don't have to leave on as much boost in RPM. Like, I'm leaving at like 4,300 RPM.
Yeah. Well, if it's not constantly broken and you have more displacement.
Yeah.
I don't really see why.
There's no reason to. Yeah.
Why step down in displacement if you're not
correct
at a limit? And
if I go anywhere, like, when we built this chassis, like, if I go anywhere after the 5.4, it'll either have a big cubic inch small block 4, because I'm a diehard small block 4 guy from back in the day, love them, or it'll have a Hemi in it. But the mod motor is my business model.
No big block Chevy.
Nope. No, I'll go to a Hemi.
Yeah.
Because I run Pro 275, and I'm not competitive, and I know that. I do it so I can get a good track, get good testing, and I go 4.0s. That's, Yeah,
where's Pro 275 at right now?
360s. Yeah. Like, I can't run with those guys, and that's fine. I don't care, but I've always raced up. I like it makes me be better. It makes me want to run next to that guy, and I'm okay with that. Like, you can't always go out and think you're going to win every race. It doesn't work like that. No. And that's what has pushed me to go. This car started as a, like a 5.0 car. Then we cut, a couple years ago. Eric, my buddy that drives the red car, we redid the chassis. He owns Morning Glory Motorsports. We redid the chassis, complete, body off, built a whole brand new chassis on the jig in 6 weeks. Body back on, I wired it, finished the carbon, everything.
Yeah.
And the car's been just amazing.
What engine management do you use?
Holley.
Holley?
Yeah. Yeah, I was one of the first Holleys way back in the day on mod motor. Like, back when Holley didn't understand why you had to reverse the firing order in it to get it to work.
Yeah.
So that's how long I've been on it, since probably 7-8 years.
They don't even, that's weird too, because if you ever used a Holley, they don't give you many options. You just have a little drop down.
Yep.
If you don't fit into this parameter of firing order,
you're
kind of just like,
you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, because with the 2J.
Is it not? I've never looked. It's not in there.
No.
Yeah.
They're like, I talked to the guys at Holly. They're like, you can do a custom, pickup ring and custom that. And they're like, somebody's done it before. And I'm like, no thanks. Like, I don't like to hear like someone's done it maybe.
Yeah. And it's kind of how you have to run like some of the Coyote stuff, depending on what you're doing. Like if you're going to lock the cams and stuff, you have to run it and make it think it's a 5.4 with a different firing order.
Yeah.
And so there's some stuff you have to, 4.654 with a different firing order. There's some things you can do in Holly, and I've worked with those guys a lot. There's a lot of things I wish I could do. Being an electrical engineer, like I know the programming side.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I know they could do in the software that would make it better. Not saying that it's bad. Like I can do what I need to do with the car. It would just make it easier.
Yeah, because you can't write your own firmware. You can't add anything. Like we can talk about Motec where you can add anything you want if you can figure it out, if you could do it, or they'll help you do it. But Holly and other ECUs, they give you parameters to work in, and you work in those. And I get it.
Holly's market is Holly's they know their market.
Well, because it works for 99.9% of people that do it.
They could drop it in and have your car running in a few hours.
Do you run like an external Davis box or anything like that?
No, so I run no traction control. I have the wheelie control. It's in there, but it's off.
Yeah.
I've always been like I've never had a run that I could say traction control would have saved this run, because I run the car I run it as fast as I think the track can take. And am I wrong? A lot of times, yeah. Mm-hmm. Racers are wrong a lot, especially on a radio.
You're probably not trying hard enough if...
Correct. Exactly. If you're not spinning somewhere, you're not bringing it in hard enough. But usually if it spins, it's usually on the hit. The traction control is not going to do anything for me.
Yeah.
It's not going to do anything. My car, the way we built the chassis, is pretty much if it leaves and there's nothing on the track, there's no transition, no nothing, it's gone. And that's the way I like to run that car.
Well, you also bounce around between a 275 and a 315.
Correct.
So that makes a whole tricky, car in itself, because you got to change ride height and all kinds of stupid things.
Yeah, so I have everything plotted to where I know, like I said, like next weekend I'll be up running Warriors, so I got to take the lockup out because it's LDR rules. You can't even have the lockup in there. Got to take 340 out, put a 389 in, put a 315 on it, because we're running at Maryland and it's still earlier in the year. Could I run a 275? Yeah. But I'm running for points, so I want to make sure we can get down the track. Yeah. So we'll put the 315 on it, and then come home from that race, put a 370 gear in it, put a 275 on it, and go run it Cecil in Pro 275 for the Strange Street Car. So it's just back and forth and back and forth. So it's ride height, bar changes, shock height changes. It's just spring package changes.
Oh, my gosh.
But it's just data.
So you're just one of those racers that loves the punishment and the work.
Yeah. Yeah. My girlfriend, her and I started dating like a year ago, and she'd never been to a track before, never been racing. And Yellow Bullet last year was her first race.
Oh,
and
wow.
She just got straight thrown to the wolves. And she loves it. Like
we'll be here for a week.
Yeah. Yep. Enjoy. But she loves it. She didn't understand it at first, but when she hears us talk, and she gets it. Like my red car is actually my 6-year-old's. My 6-year-old's got a 14 car. And she loves it. She's always out in the shop working with me.
Yep.
That's the best. That's like my crowning achievement, is that my 6-year-old loves to sit out in the shop with me.
Just hang out.
Yeah, and she's they're coming up. She'll be at the track next week with us, and but yeah, a lot of racers. You get a lot of guys that love cars, but that doesn't make them a racer. Like the people like me or like Brett, like we live this stuff. Like Wonder Racing is I do very well with it as a business, but I'm an electrical engineer by trade. Like that's what I do for a living. I do consulting and stuff. So but the racing is my passion. Like I tell Courtney all the time, like I'm a race car. Like it is what it is. Like I just drove 18 hours through the night. To get down here to race this, but most people are like, why would you? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean,
get down there and race for $5,000, $10,000.
As much as I love racing, I know I don't have that level of desire to be pulling apart the car and changing combos constantly and trying to figure out that next. I just enjoy going, I probably have more of the bracket racer mentality of just,
okay.
You go to the track, you let off the button, you have some fun.
Yep.
Like, the car kind of keeps doing its thing. If it keeps working the same way, I'm pretty happy with that.
Pick up a couple numbers here and there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then there's like the guy that, I'm out of turbo. Go to the next turbo. Oh, I'm out of camshaft. Like, within like 3 weeks, it's just like constantly changing things.
When you figure it out, like when you figure out little steps, like, that's something, Brett and Jim and I have talked about, like, people don't understand the difference and the amount of work Brett had to do to go from his 409 to his 399, or even to his 405, 404, 401 to 399. Like,
yeah, you look at the board and you're like, oh, you're so close.
Yeah, but you're so close, but yet so far away.
Yeah,
and that's what people don't. A lot of people don't get, especially when you have this small of an engine combination. When you only got 300 to 340 cubic inches. We're making, him and I are making 3,000 plus horsepower with these tiny little junk blocks.
Yeah.
Like, let's just be honest. They're just junk cast. They're good cast, but they're junk cast.
And it's like, you're not in a pro mod. You're in a factory style-ish, suspension and everything. Like, it's a real bodied car.
Yeah, like I'm 28. I'm between 2860 and 2890 is where my car lives.
Yeah.
Just because of the weights, because I run class racing. I can't get to 2275 to run Pro 275. If I could, car will go 380s, no problem. I shed, John Sears always laughs when I come through on the, across the scales in Pro 275. He's like, just made it. Because I'm 450 pounds overweight, like, and I know that, but that's the car I chose to build. I wanted to keep it. I wanted to keep all the steel, the steel from the Cobra as far as the body's concerned. That's just what I wanted to do. Still got a factory Cobra rear bumper on it. It's got a fiberglass nose on it. But it looks like a Cobra, and that's what I wanted. It's all factory dimensions. Like, I wasn't willing to give up certain things. Like, we could have cut a lot more out. Like, I had to tell, Eric, he just wanted to just cut it all out. I'm like, man, I still want to keep this a car. Like, even though we literally lifted the shell off, it's just a wavy shell off the jig. I'm like, I still want this thing to be a car. And that was the hard decision.
I know. I hear that as well, because I look at my car and I'm like, man, like, I got all, steel and almost all glass.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I have all that stuff, and it's like, I like having that stuff. Yep. I like my trunk to open normal. I like my hood to open normal.
But you miss those things when you don't have them.
But those are the reasons that I'm not going to get to the next level, because I'm not ready to be like, I'll just ruin the car.
Correct.
In a way. I almost just need a different car because I like the way it sits.
Yep. A lot of times it's easier, truthfully, like once you reach a plateau, like I had a choice. I could have just left my car, sold it, and just went and bought a roller. Mm-hmm. But me, like, unfortunately, I get attached to everything. Like, I don't sell shit. Nothing. I sell nothing. I sold my 83 F-150 that I drove in high school. I just don't sell anything. I love it. So I that's why we chose to cut that car up. Then my other car, it was a good deal. I bought it from Manny Bajinga. Become real good friends with him. But I bought his car because I wanted the twin turbo, as you know, puts you out of a lot of classes. Like, you can't run a lot of stuff. So I wanted to be able to run some X275, some single turbo, no time stuff. So that's why I built. We decided to build a second car, and it's just as much work. So
I can imagine two cars.
Yeah, like you come to our pits at World Cup, and it's there's two full cars. Like Saturday at World Cup before elimination next day, I'm checking bearings to make sure that we're good to go for eliminations. I don't want to get bit.
Well, I think that's a rule at World Cup that you have to be like middle of the night, fully torn apart your whole car.
Yeah, if not, you're just not doing something.
Yeah, like if you walk through World Cup, it's like just chaos.
Yep.
Just everywhere.
Honda Row is on, like they're down below us, 2 or 3 in the morning. It's just two-step after two-step after two-step.
Yeah.
It's the best. I love it. Like if you've never been there, just to hear all the two-step checks at like 2, 3 in the morning, it's the best.
The Miller brothers put on rest in peace.
Yeah. Chris is an awesome dude. And Jason, that whole family is amazing.
They put on an awesome event.
Yeah.
I've always liked World Cup because their rules are unique, but really good.
Yeah.
Because X275 rules, okay, they're great, but they're not like they run them all over the country.
Correct.
These are one-off rules that somehow cross over to somehow work for everyone.
Correct. Yeah, like
there's Hondas and there's RX-7s and there's weird imports.
Yeah, like with white rice and stuff. Yeah.
Pickup trucks that run it, like, and they all somehow cross over well enough.
And they're close. Yeah. Jason's done a really good job. Him and I have talked a lot with, because I run the Warriors and then I run Warriors Race Quarto up there. And, with last year, like we've qualified number one the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Especially on Sunday, when that track changes on Sunday, and as you get deeper into the rounds, it's just the track's different than what you had the last 3 days.
Well, the track's different from when they call you to the lanes to when you make a pass.
Yeah, because you're looking at a 20-degree swing sometimes.
Yeah, so I've seen, you get called in, you're like, oh, the sun's out, and then it drops past those trees, and
it's game on.
And that tree line's close, so it drops past those trees pretty quickly.
And you're making another 200-300 horsepower then, on top of the track cooling down. So it's tough. One thing I did, I don't know if you saw, one thing that Jason is doing, if it's a 32-car field, E1's going to be on Saturday night now.
That's nice.
To try to help Sunday not be as much of a rush.
Yeah, not end at midnight.
Correct.
Because it's better fan experience.
It's better, and it's better for the racer because he doesn't have to shortcut on prep.
Yep.
He can, because that's the biggest thing is you get later into, from round 3 on, the track's different. Yeah. He's not going out and doing full drag. He's going to the 60 or he's going to the 330 now. And MDR has a really bad transition in the right lane. They have it in both lanes, but the right lane is really bad. And if it's not glued properly at that transition, like a car like mine, that's where I lost last year in round 3. Yeah. Just went out, car never spun all weekend. And then all of a sudden, track got called, prep. And it is what it is. It's racing. I don't get mad.
I think that's where Farlow's car kind of hit the transition, topped out the shock a little bit, and just unsettled. And
and it's dangerous. And people don't realize, especially on the radio, you get that much wheel speed, you're on ice. Mm-hmm. You can't slow it down. There's no stopping. It's going to do what it does. And luckily, hopefully, if the car is straight and both tires grab traction at the same time, it's going to keep you straight. But unfortunately, I'm good friends with Farlow. He's my buddy.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. That car was a real weapon for a long time.
We had a lot of fun racing him. We raced him a lot. We would go down to North Carolina sometimes and race him in no time stuff.
Very consistent.
Yeah, and Farlow's a really good dude. He's a really good racer too. Mm-hmm. Really good.
And that was a shame too because I think it was one of those deals where it hit both cars.
Yeah, he took out his buddy's car.
Darted into the other lane. Yeah, you always hate to see that when
him and I were having
collateral
a conversation.
Damage.
What was it, about a month ago, and I told him that if Eric ever did not want to race the car, he would probably be the only other one that I would trust to race the car.
To drive it.
Yeah, because I barely ever, I couldn't tell you last time I raced my red car. The seat's set up for Eric, and it is what it is. He's, like I said, Eric's my boy. He's traveled all over the country for me the last 5 or 6 years. We've been everywhere together. So now it's nice that, I've had that car, I built the car, 3 years ago, and he puts pretty much 99% of the laps on the car.
Not down here this weekend, is it?
No. He's got a couple of my customers' cars in his shop doing some chassis work this week, so he's busy. But when I go home, I'll throw the red car in his trailer and bring it to Maryland, and he'll race there next weekend because my car will already be. I'll stop and drop my car off in Maryland on the way home. And that's the thing is people don't realize the things you do to race.
Yeah.
It's
most of racing is just towing a trailer.
It's insane. I will.
You go to TX2K and it's 3 days for you.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, because I did some work at my company that I used to work for was in Dallas, and it's a 28 hour ride.
Yeah. It's
miserable.
That's rough.
Yeah, towing I had a 44, now I got a 53. And it's
a lot of trailer.
It's a lot of trailer, but that's because I have a lot of spares. That's my thing. I love my 44, and it's it's got a full bathroom, bed, everything. But I couldn't deal with not being able to take everything I needed. Fittings, converters, transmission, rear gears, axles, engine, everything. We carry it because I'm going, I'll be on the road for 3 weeks.
I was going to say, it makes sense, but, for this deal, it doesn't make as much sense because it's
only a 2-day deal.
Qualifying and then racing. So it doesn't make much sense, but if you go to a deal like Yellow Bullet where
correct.
You're there
we
for
can
a
change
few days.
I can change a bullet in 2 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, my car. When we build my car, we build it to change.
Yeah, serviceable.
And my engine, same with the transmissions. Like my transmissions already have harnesses on them. They're fully plumbed. They're plug and play.
Well, those are wear items. All of that stuff at this power, people don't realize.
Yep.
Everything's a wear item.
Everything, and that's what I don't care how much money you spend on an engine, especially like with the platform we chose. It doesn't matter. It's gonna wear out. Like you're gonna crack pistons. You're gonna hurt rods. You're gonna knock a main bearing out. If you and a lot of times it's if you miss the tune-up or anything. A cylinder goes dead for a cycle. It doesn't matter what it is. Something's going to pay the price.
Yeah.
And that's just, it is what once you accept it, racing at this level, then it's a lot more relaxing. I used to get so frustrated because nobody's doing the 5.4. So we were kind of like, well, we're going to keep pushing this platform. And there was a time to where, it was about 3 years ago, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. We were hurting rods, just hit like a plateau, like that 425 plateau. I just hit it. And if I put more than 40 pounds of boost into the car, it was going to hurt the rod. Don't know why. Well, I knew why. Because I was running it a little bit too lean. And that was it. Like, it was so simple, but it's just one of those, I didn't know what the motor needed.
And it was hurting the rod because it was
knocking the rod bearing out. Yeah, because it was lean detonating.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people are like, oh, you're not worried about saying that. Like, you build engines, like you hurt engines. I'm like, yeah, but you don't get it. Nobody's pushing this stuff. If you push it, you're going to hurt it. There's a reason why I keep, 5 sets of bearings in the trailer at all times, because if I miss a tune-up one time, or if I get, like I said, if I get a cylinder that misses a cycle, I'm going to check it.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is what it is.
There's also a difference watching you hurt something going low 4s
and something going 490s.
The guys going, 5s hurting their motor every pass.
Exactly. Big
then difference. You're like, okay, well.
Yeah. If I heard it at 3,000 horsepower, I'm not mad.
Yeah.
Like, Brett, like I said, Brett and I were having that conversation. Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't care who builds it, what parts you use. It's going to happen. And that's to where, one of our biggest fears is, is if we get bumped up a class at World Cup. So the next class is a 580s class.
Well, you shouldn't go number one qualifier.
Exactly, which I wouldn't be mad about. So I'd be like middle of the pack.
In X275 if you go number one qualifier, and you get bumped up a class at World Cup.
Exactly. The problem is then it's like, okay, to go 580s, people are like, well, you're going, your 8th mile, what you're running the 8th mile, you should go, 6.0s. Well, it's like, do you understand what it takes to go from 6.0 to 580? Like, it's hundreds of horsepower.
I use my calculator.
Yeah. My calculator's my checkbook, And then also, it's not even about even making more horsepower. It's like, I can't get more weight out of the car.
Yeah.
So it's not going to help me. Yeah, I'll be able to run the lockup, because like with Warriors, I can't run the lockup. Even at World Cup, I can't run the lockup.
Huh.
Which sucks, because it's, that's my crossover. Like Brett, he crossed over from thing like Texas 2K or FL2K rules.
TX2K, street car.
So he could run the lockup because there's no transmission rule. Warriors, is that class, but I can't run a lockup in.
But you can run a 315 in that class.
I can run a 315, yeah. So it's like, you could run the bottom a little bit harder, but I would, if I had the choice, I'd run the 275 with the lockup. Yeah. Because the 275 does accelerate harder with these little engines.
It was interesting that Brett chose not to run 315s, even though he could have.
I think it's the way I believe his reasoning was, one, it was Jim. I know Jim did not want to. Yeah, he would make fun of him. But I think it was more of a, like, that's the data he had. Yeah. Because if you don't have the data on the 315, like, I have to change a lot. I have to run it harder down low just to roll that tire.
It's probably harder on the car.
It's very much.
To get that big,
that's a big tire to accelerate.
Yeah.
So I get mechanical advantage from the rear gear, so that helps me a little bit. I try to stay around that 540 to 580 starting line ratio.
Yep.
Depending on what tire, what rear gear, and what I'm doing. But at the same time, it's a balance. So that tire can take more, but it takes more to accelerate.
Yeah, you got to hit it a lot harder.
Yeah, I got to ramp it. I'm at 48 to 50 pounds of boost at 0.8.
Probably pretty hard on the bearings to hit it that hard right off the hit.
Yeah, so it's a give and take. So that's why, like I said, I chose to run a 315 because I couldn't run the lockup.
I've always heard those 315s too are really finicky with getting two that are identical.
Yes.
Like the rollout on them.
Yeah, I'll buy 4 at a time. Usually.
Just to get two that are the same.
Just to get two that are close.
Yeah, I've heard that's really weird on the 315s.
The 275s, you don't see the issue with. The 315s, they're not bad, but when things like that matter, like when you get down to it, things like that matter, and it's really tough sometimes. So I'll buy 4 at a time, and then I'll make ATEC or Summit take them back. Be like, these two aren't even close.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, you can measure around a tire 2 315s or 4 of them, and
they're all different.
They vary quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's pretty important on a car that...
Correct. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it could act as almost if you put rear steer in the car, if one's taller, one's shorter.
Yeah.
So it'll, essentially drive like a tank or a fork truck, however you want to look at it. So you got to be really careful. The slightest variations don't make that big of a deal, but it's when you get, I've had 1/4 inch difference.
Yeah.
Almost 3/8. So that is going to make a significant difference. And it's the faster you go, the more the little things matter.
Well, one of those deals too is somebody that doesn't know that might start chasing their tail. They put a set of 315s on, brand new this weekend.
Car's going left.
Boom, boom, good deal.
Yep.
Why's the car going left?
Yep. And then they're going to get lost in the weeds because, the first thing I tell people is if the car's going a direction, like if I'm helping a customer or something like that, swap tires. Swap them side to side.
Yep.
Then see what the car does. If it follows it, just like anything, anything you troubleshoot, if it follows it, like an injector, swap banks.
Yep.
Same way. If it follows it, okay, now we know it's the tire. But if it doesn't, then it could be chassis. And some of these tracks, like my car, I'll have to put rear steer in it to go straight on some of these tracks, just because of how the groove is. And I know that. I know what tracks I have to do that. Like Martin, Michigan, I would have to in the left lane. I'd have to put some rear steer in. So that's just, and I know that. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, and you would do that with the anti-roll bar on your car?
I don't. I do it with the lower control arm.
Okay, interesting.
Or the lower bars. Yeah. Because mine's a true 4-link.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess anytime my car is doing anything weird, it's usually anti-roll bar.
Depending on how bad it is, like I have a little bit of preload, but I do it to square the chassis. I just have a little bit of like 1/8 of a turn of preload on my passenger side just to get the car to leave a little bit, so it leaves flat.
Yeah.
But other than that, I always like to, before every race, I check the bars, neutral everything out, make sure everything's true, and then depending on what it's doing, first, Q1, then I'll make the adjustment from there.
That right there, that statement is that extra 10% and that extra, the doing your homework at home is
notebooks. I have notebooks upon notebooks.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff is usually what I noticed separates racers pretty heavily.
It's all data.
And how much time is done in the shop on a car versus I mean, I see so many people show up at the track and then they're like, "Oh, I'm going to wire in this sensor."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
We're testing. You just paid for testing.
Yep. And that's the thing is like, so, I'll do, my day job and then I work in the shop, whether it's building engines, and I build complete cars as well, do all the fabrication, everything. And then in the evening, it's, my daughter's out there with me and stuff. She loves to be out in the shop with me. And I'll be working on my car, one of my 2 cars. And it's till, I'll put her to bed and then I'll go back out and, and work in the shop, till 2 or 3 in the morning. But that's what it takes to be successful. You're not going to do it ending your day at 4 o'clock. Yeah. And that's just like any business, and I treat my racing as my business. Like it's the race on Sunday, sell on Monday mentality. And that's just, I love that racing has got back to that. I love it. I think it went away, in my opinion, it went away for a little bit. But I can tell, like when I do well, my business does well, and that's just, I think it's just a reflection on what I can do with this platform.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people really take notice to what cars are performing well, and like me and Brett use Fast Forward race engines, and
Joe's an amazing engine builder,
really good friend of mine, and he was, after my car crashed, he was the first person I was talking to because it kicked all the freeze plugs, 3 freeze plugs out of it. So I'm over there asking Joe, like, what do you think happened? He's like, I don't know, we'll check it out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, do you think it did this? He's like, I don't know, we'll check it out.
Yep. Yeah, you don't speculate before. Yeah.
I know, and I was like...
It's so tough because you want an answer now.
I know, and I'm the guy that just adrenaline and all that. I'm like, what happened? But he is so much more versed at this that he's just like, I don't know. I'm not going to say... Like, he didn't guess. He didn't say anything. He was just like...
Just get it to me.
Yeah, he was like, well, I don't know. We'll open it up. And I'm like, wow, I gain a lot of respect for that because it kind of made me realize, like, you don't want your engine builder to just start throwing random things at you.
Yep.
Like, oh, it probably did this to the valve. Like, why do you think that? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. And then you're on a wild goose chase in your head. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instead of, hey, let's figure it out. And I assume what do? Just kick a head gasket?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Cylinder 6 right out the back pretty much. And then water. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So I've been there. That's one of the reasons my engines my heads are dry decked, because it was back in the NMRA days at Bowling Green. I was racing actually Jake Conant, and I lifted a head. It was only on like 28, 30 pounds of boost back then, but it lifted a head and blew the lower rad hose on the driver's side under the tire, and it sent me into a flat spin. Yeah. And luckily I just barely slowing down, bumped the wall, but yeah, that people don't realize, like, that's not a fun time.
No.
You are out of control. There's
Yeah. And a lot of people were like, you should have pulled the parachute. I'm like, it just darted at the wall.
Yeah. Yours literally just made a left turn.
Yeah, it was just like right at the wall. I was like, I would have been that guy where the parachute just tangles up in you. Yeah. And it's just kind of on the ground.
Yeah, it was not going to do it, unfortunately. No. Even an air launcher, would not have done anything, unfortunately.
It wouldn't have ballooned.
That's just like Haley. I don't know if you know Haley. She wrecked years ago in Bowling Green. Her car went out. I can't remember. I think it was like a throttle. She had a Fox body. It was like a white, red, and blue.
Yeah.
Red, white, and
blue. Talking
blue.
Haley James?
Yeah. Yeah. She had that Fox body before she got this new Edge. Mm-hmm. And it went out left and just nosed right to the right. There was no saving it. There's nothing you can do.
It's just a bunch of flat spotted tires. And
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Once you get that wheel speed, especially on a radial, it's tough.
Well, it was both tires because it was freeze plugs on both sides. So it was just both tires.
Whichever had a little bit more traction is the opposite way it turned. Is all it did.
Exactly. So it just kind of, I was kind of glad that it went to the other wall because I had more time to slow the car down.
Correct. Yeah.
But then I'm sitting there thinking, there's a guy in the other lane
coming right at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the scary part. Like, I slid behind like Jake's chutes when I was in a flat spin. Like, I could see his chutes out my window, and that was the scariest thing.
Yeah.
About it, because you don't want to. If I'm going to wreck, I didn't want to. I wasn't going to wreck somebody else.
That's
my biggest fear.
I was like, I don't want to hit somebody else's car. Whatever, wad my car up. It is what it is. But I also didn't want to get T-boned by someone else's car.
Correct. Yeah. Because there's the car. There's no coming back on the car from that one, unfortunately.
And drag race cars, they're not like drift cars where they have like protruded door bars that.
Like, you're going to feel it.
Yeah, the door bars are coming in. Like, they're meant to like hit a wall on the side, not really get
pierced.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, the difference there.
Correct. Yeah, and that's, it's one of those things. It's not if, it's a when. They say, that's the age-old statement. And, as racers, we, as what I think responsible racers are, we do everything we can. Like you're still running a water cooled block, just like Brett. Brett's still running water cooled. So like it could happen to him at any point.
I have a big belly pan, but
it just sprays out the side.
I mean, it's so high up on the motor.
Yep. You have to have an entire shield. Like, the whole thing.
How am I gonna catch all that?
Yep.
It basically hit like both strut towers, and we're just back. Like,
and there's nothing you can do about it. Like I said, it was for what happened. It's not a bad outcome, essentially.
No,
in my opinion.
Probably the better out. If it didn't snap back and hit the wall in the tail,
it
would have been
good.
Great. Yeah. Like, it would have been real easy.
A couple nose pieces.
But then when it like kind of did that little snap back was where it was rough. But it's racing. I mean, it's kind of what we know we're going to sign up for.
Yep. And the faster you go, the higher your chances, because when things go wrong faster.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I have customers that, we're building a couple of them now, and they're going to be 410s, 420s, 430 cars. And I tell them, like, you're going to go 5.0s first. You're going to get used to 5.0s, because then you're going to go 490s. And, like, we're going to creep it up, because they're the same. Essentially, they're the same as my red car. They're the same power plant, same 5.4, same turbo. Like, everything's the same. Transmission, rear gear, everything's the same, just in a different body. And I told them, like, a couple of my customers, like, I'm not letting you loose on this tire. I don't want that on my conscience, but I don't want it. I just don't want to get you hurt.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the seat time when one of these things loses a tire. Like, when they lose it, when a radial loses a tire and you're not ready for it, like, you have to, it gets to a point to where you almost have to anticipate it. In my opinion.
Yeah, I've chicken-footed my car plenty of times.
Yeah.
Just because you're like, oh, it might spin and then, or it might wheelie, and you just chicken-foot and you're like, damn it.
Yep. And then sometimes it works out because it is losing the tire, you know. But yeah, and that's a lot of racers these days. They just think they can just get into a car and go people don't realize what a 450 car is. A 450 car is fast.
Yeah, I've only ever been 460.
Yeah. And everybody thinks that they want a 450 car. And it's like, you've never been 10s in the quarter mile. And you want to go 450s in the eighth. Like, you have no idea how that feels. And that's where I wish more people would understand that they need to progress and don't, like, there's just guys there's people with money that just throw money at a car. They'll go buy a proven car, or they'll just spend, $500,000 and have a Pro 275 car, RVW car, LDR car built, and they're not ready for it. And those are usually the guys, unfortunately, that wad it up or get hurt.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And the other flip side is that, too, is like if you build a capable 6-second street car, you're watching the street car class that's pretty good right now.
Yeah.
And you build a car that's capable of that, but you're working on that seat time, you're probably like kind of frustrated because people are like looking at your car that's capable of all this.
Yep.
So now you're the guy that's like sandbagging,
Yep.
but you're not going to the capability of the car, and like running a car to like, 80% or 70% of its capability kind of sucks. Like
it does.
You probably feel like, oh,
yeah, it's like I want to let this thing loose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're that guy that's kind of in like a pro mod, mini mod, the joke, but like now you're running it slower, but you have to cut your teeth a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. It takes laps. Like, I mean, I've been doing this, this style of racing for 6 to 7 years, and I started going, I think, my first couple passes were 580s, and then just progressed.
Which is, for most people,
that's a lot.
That's pretty fast. 580s, like, I have so many time slips of like an 850 quarter mile, like an 850 to like a, like a 780.
Yep.
And I did that for years. And everybody, when are you going to make it go sixes? When are you going to make it go sixes? I'm like, this is fast.
Yeah. like if you've never done it, it's fast.
Going 175, I know it doesn't sound crazy because you do that in the eighth.
Yeah.
But like for people that aren't as like versed in it, it's a very fast car.
It is, and that's it. And like
you probably go 188.
I've been 185 and some change.
Yeah. So in the eighth.
yeah. And that's the thing. Is like I always tell people the worst part about going 220 plus is the chutes catching. That's the absolute worst part, in my opinion. It is so like it's just I don't like that feeling of uneasy, and sometimes the car gets unsettled if there's a crosswind. Yeah. Like I just put smaller chutes on my car to try to dim down that crack of the chutes, to try to hit it a little bit softer. Just because it's if you've never felt it, that negative 3.5, 4G, it hurts sometimes.
Well, two chutes do weird things too. Sometimes one goes straight up in the air.
Yep.
Like sometimes they kind of flip around on each other.
And if they don't crack and blossom at the same time, it'll kick you sideways like at World Cup last year.
Yeah.
I got down by the trees in the left lane in the evening. We went, I think, 621 at like 226 against Craig Walls, actually. He was in the right lane. I was in the left. And in the left lane, you're closer to those trees. And when it went through there, it almost put me into the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And
up at the top end there, there's you're in a forest.
Correct.
Up there.
Because the driver's side chute just, whether it was how we packed it or it was just how the air hit it, like how it got thrown up into the airstream. There's so many things, and that's why this year I decided to put the little bit they're two sizes smaller parachutes. They're still within what Stroud wants on their chart. But I went to like the smallest in my range to try to diminish that.
Yeah, it's a surprising thing to hear the chutes, because even you have to really drive into them to get them to work right too.
Yep, and that's where a lot of people lose their car, like the Honda guys. You'll see them spike the brake.
Yeah. And
then the chute blossoms. Well, they've already transferred the weight. So then it just becomes a kite at that point.
Yeah, and they're like 80% nose weight too.
Exactly.
So that doesn't help them either.
Yeah, because then it's just doing this.
Yeah,
it's
they're
just
already
floating.
doing weird stuff.
So yeah, that's one of the biggest things I tell, people. I had to tell, Eric when he started driving my car, because our red car's been 650 at 216 in that car with a single turbo. Yeah. So that car's been like 419, 420, 419.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. Single turbo, X275 trim. It's heavy. It's 50. That's what that car weighs. And same way with him. That car's got a big single chute on it. So, it was at World Cup 3 years ago. We went number 1 qualifier in that car. And he had been running, like I just let him run 8th mile. And then I said to him, I said, are you ready? It was in like Q3 or Q4. I said, are you ready to run this thing out? And it went 652 at 209. And he come back and he's like shaking. And it was just an awesome experience. But he's like, man, like that's how that feels. I'm like, yeah, it's that. People don't realize the back half is so short, but it is such an amazing ride. Mm-hmm. When you're going that fast, like there's no other feeling like it. It's just pure bliss. I know people like, oh, well, the 8th mile, you're accelerating. And I'm like, man, I get it. It's only 2 seconds long, but man, is it a ride. Like just that rush of going 220 plus, and you can see, and everything is slowed down. Like I can see the cones. I can see everything. And it's such a rush. And it's just where it takes laps.
Especially when, like, watching in-car videos of some of these more modern streetcar style stuff, when Lockup hits on the back end, you can tell almost like a warp drive.
Yes.
Like Garrett's car is always a good example.
Correct, yeah.
When you see Mullet's Lockup hit, because he's got all the cubic inch and all the turbo,
yeah.
It's almost
His
like...
can pull through the Lockup.
Yeah, it's almost like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And like the drive shaft curve just kind of like...
Yep, they meet. Yeah. It's like, you two are coming together.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where, that's one of the things I'm going to,
and it's a big car, heavy car kind of doing that.
So to accelerate that thing, and that's what, that thing, it's fast for what it is. I mean,
for sure.
Let's be honest. It is quick. I don't care what engine's in it. It's fast for what it is. That's a lot of vehicle mass to move in that short amount of time. And Pete's a good tuner. Like it's going to get faster.
Long wheelbase, kind of awkward where the weight is with the turbos.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Like on a radial car, way up high like that. I mean, and it all depends on how you look at it. Yes, it's throwing the weight to the rear, so it's helping the transfer, but is it transferring too much to where you can't accelerate? Like it's now with the 4-link, if it helps it transfer, as long as it stands up and the rear end overruns the front, climbs up over the front. Yeah. Like if you watch my car, my car is going almost 7 inches and it's just snow plowing. It kind of looks like grubworm. It's almost the same thing.
By the end of Grubworm's pass, he's touching the nose on the ground more and more.
Yeah, my front.
Each gear you see it go like farther down.
Yeah, like my splitter is in. Like I can see it pushing the front shocks down on the data. Mm-hmm. And then I have a big carbon wing on mine to where it's so stable and I can actually see the downforce in the rear shocks as I'm going down track.
Interesting.
It's trying to put, it's maintaining. And it's just a nice bell curve.
Yeah.
Is what we try to keep. So, like I said, it's tough. Like people don't get to get it all to come together when you have so many pieces. You got to, your converter, your rear gear, your engine, your transmission ratio. Like, well, I got 3 or 4 different transmissions with different ratios in it. Some lockup, some non-lockup. 4 center chunks in the, spare center chunks in the trailer. Like and I would love the test. Like we were joking. I said, man, if I was down in Florida, I would just get my mail at Bradenton because I'd be here every day. Like, because it's just you have to test in order to get faster. Like. That's the advantage, and Brett does it. He does. That boy tests.
He has a very small hammer mentality.
Yes.
Where anytime some people go out and they swing big on every change.
Time. Yep.
But with them, they change very small things. I've gotten to spend a lot of time with them and learn a lot from that program and Job, the tuner, and everything.
Joe's amazing. That dude is so smart.
Very smart.
He's so intelligent.
Yeah, I've gotten to talk to him a lot, and anytime I do get to talk to him or Jay, I always value that because you're learning something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just having a conversation with, guys like him, or it's just like, when I would talk with Manny, have conversation with Manny Bajinga.
Yep.
Just he's been around so much longer. Like I've learned a lot about how to run a converter. With him, how to use the dumps to manipulate the converter to make it roll over the engine where I want it.
Yeah.
Like my car, it's got 4 dumps on it, so I can run. Because, the problem is without a lockup, I have to run a really, really tight stator to keep it coupled out the back.
4 dump valves.
Yeah. So, but I can't, that stator doesn't want to leave the line because it's so tight. So I have to manipulate the converter with my dump valves in order to get it to act like a loose stator down low.
Yep.
But it's a tight stator out the back. So
that's cool.
Yeah, and it just takes laps. And I have to make a little bit bigger steps because I'm up north. I can't just, drive to Florida to race or something. But this year, luckily, because, with Courtney, she loves it. We're doing like 17 or 18 events. I think the most I've ever done was like 13 or 14. So we're going to be able to, luckily with her, she loves it. And we're going to put a lot of laps on both cars this year.
That's awesome.
So it's worked out really, really well. And there's something to be said when you have a partner that truly does support you.
Yeah.
Dude, that means the world.
I know. I'm lucky enough where my wife loves it. And, I think a lot of it is like she's like come around the people that I know through racing. And any person, like, drag racing, you go leave your wallet and everybody's gonna be like, "Hey, you forgot it." It's like it's that.
Yeah,
group
somebody's not
of people.
they're not gonna empty your wallet and be like, "Hey, I found this for
like
you."
it's that like community of people, and everybody there works their ass off to be drag racers. They all own a business, most likely, or they're all independently successful of some way. So you're kind of around like-minded people, which is nice. It's the best sport for that. Like my parents never been around drag racing their whole life. My dad was like, "These are my people. Like this is awesome. Like everybody's here are good people. They're, doing the national anthem beforehand. Like he's like, it's
how it should be."
Yeah, he's like, "I want to do more of this."
Yeah, and that's how it should be. Like a lot of people could take, like I'm known for having spares. Like, like I said, I just lent Doug a converter, today. And I'm known for, I've offered, I offered Mark Meering a bullet at Alabama. Like to me, I keep spares upon spares, fittings and lines and everything in my trailer. And it's not just for me. It's just like, well, I've lent out thousands of dollars worth of parts over the last 5 or 6 years, because I know what it's like. It's like, man, like all I need is this button and I can continue to race. I don't care if you're racing me. Like it doesn't matter to me. And that's where a lot of people don't understand the mentality and the bonds that you build with these people. Especially like me and Brett. Like it's pretty much me and Brett racing each other at all these goddamn events. Like it just if I go somewhere in Florida or whatever, it's me and Brett racing.
Hopefully my boys over at Induction.
Yeah.
I throw their hat in the ring.
I can't wait.
A little more, and even Larry with the drag.
Yeah, with the orange car. Yeah, the Dragzine car.
Dragzine, Dragzine. Yeah. That car, they got it pretty dialed in.
Yep.
Hopefully that thing
does
something cool.
I just saw Gus. He was just parking when I left the track. I don't know if he's running 28. Or is he running no time? I didn't.
Probably no time.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if he was going to run it out the back or not.
And they're a great example. They were at a no time race. They had a problem with their parachute. I came home. I got my parachute. Brought it to them. Yep. I had never met them in my life. I'd never talked to him before, and I was just like, "Sure, here you go."
Yeah. And that's what it's about.
Car had no engine. I was like, "What? I don't need it at the moment."
So, I'm not going to need this thing.
Of course, take it.
Yeah, while I was down here for Mod Nationals in November, and track was really tricky because it was hot. So Brandon Kershaw, he bought he bought Fletcher's old blue car. He runs it in no time. Yeah. He has Fletcher Cox's car. He's from California. Awesome guy. And he's like, "You should try these pro brackets." And I'm like, I'd have to get them, from ATEC. I'd have to overnight them. And this was Friday late, and he just replace them. He just comes over, and I'm used to the guy. I'm used to being the guy that gives stuff out. So it's like really weird for me to be like, somebody hand me stuff. And it was like I said, and that's what it's about. You do it, and it's like, oh well, I just ordered these. They'll be at your house before you get back home. Like no big deal. But that's how it should be. It's like if you need something, like I told Doug today, man, whatever you need. I got 15 stators. Like we can keep trying stators all weekend long if you need. Like whatever you need. He's so good to me. And I don't mind at all doing that for stuff because I would want somebody to do that for me if I was 18 hours from home.
We've put cars on the trailer and then turned around and like, "Hey, we need your alternator," and they'll pull it right off.
Yep.
Like we just beat them round one, and it's like, "Hey, actually, our alternator died.
Yeah.
And you got the same one," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking it off. Don't even."
Yeah. And nobody understands that. They're like, "What? He just beat you. Why would you do that?"
Yeah.
It's like you just. until you're in it, you don't understand it. And that's, and that's the same way, like we said, with having a partner that supports you. It's like, Courtney's biggest thing is she's like, I see you're passionate about it. And I just, she just wants to be there to support me to be passionate about it. And it's something that I want to do with my daughter. Because, being her dad it trumps drag racing as a new
I know,
dad.
I got a 4-month-old. Yeah. I can't even imagine once he's like handing me a wrench.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing. So like no matter what I do in drag racing, it'll never trump, having her. But I want her, if she wants to. If she doesn't, then that's cool. But if she does, like, she's gonna be on. Like she always, like, we were at a father-daughter dance last week, and she's like, Daddy, you're probably the only one that, here that's been 200. And I'm like, probably, sweetheart. Just because she knows, like, Daddy goes 200.
But the flip side of drag racing is she doesn't have to be a driver to be in drag racing.
Correct.
Like, there are so many awesome opportunities in this sport.
Yeah.
That
people make amazing livings off of this
but
stuff.
Just being a part of the sport, there's so many cool opportunities, and they're growing, and hopefully the sport obviously continues to grow.
Yeah.
But there's so many opportunities. Like, even if my son doesn't want to be a driver, if he wants to be on a laptop and helping somebody there, cool.
Yeah,
exactly. Yep. That's awesome. Like, live it up.
Yeah, and like, I think drag racing's on its I think it's on a high. Most definitely right now. Like people like Doug, people like Victor, people like Duck. Yeah, people think Duck's a pain in the ass or whatever. But the dude.
You gotta respect it.
You gotta respect him, and I love him. I think it's hilarious.
I love enjoy it. Yeah.
Just like Victor talking shit, tagging each one of us and talking shit. It's like that's what racing needs. Nobody wants boring. Like, I was listening on the way down. West Buck. Drag racing is like the only one, and we got to get people in the stands. Like, that's the hardest part of drag racing. And what Victor's doing and what West Buck and Duck and all these guys are doing, it's better for, of course, they're there, their facilities, but it's better for us. Like, we don't want to race in front of an empty stand. Like, will we? Yes. As a drag racer, yes, we will. But we don't want to. But that's the hardest part. You got to create that drama.
Lining up at World Cup when there's full stands on both sides, like TX2K, full stands on both sides. It's like...
It's an experience.
A lot of people say, like, oh, do you get nervous doing that? I'm like, no, that's the best.
Yeah.
Like, that's
your
when
blood
it's
is pumping.
Yeah, that's when, like, adrenaline is peak, and you're just like...
Yeah, when I sit there, like round 1 World Cup, and I sit there and I pump the line lock up and hold it and, drop it into second gear, and you just look up and it's like, this is insane.
Yeah. The announcers are, who's got the white Mustang?
Yeah. And it is. It's just, it's a feeling that until you do it.
Yeah.
Like, I played baseball, and stuff like that my entire life, and nothing compares to drag racing. Mm-hmm. Nothing, in my opinion. It's just, as far as the rush you get.
But as far as like an engineering standpoint, there's nothing that like flexes every engineering muscle as well.
Yeah.
From like, dealing with fluid dynamics and like, you got to make this little fire happen, explosion happen consistently and well. And like, you have to know every facet of engineering and like all this different math. And like, you're talking about these books and plotting things. And like, that stuff is... next level stuff that most people don't realize.
Yeah, and it's changing. We do,
You can't just slap a car together and be like, here you go.
People try. That's why they're, they don't do very well at it.
It takes homework.
Yeah. And even just, doing, whether if I change if I change fluid, the transmission is going to act differently.
Yeah.
So, and like at Mod Nationals, like I needed a little bit more charge pressure. So, there's 2 different ways for me to get more charge pressure without tearing the transmission apart. I can change. So I jet my cooler outline. Essentially, it holds back pressure on the converter. Mm-hmm. So I can change that jet. I can change the shim in my relief valve to where, it won't let as much fluid through. And I can get a couple hundred RPM out the back.
Yeah.
With that. And it's just knowing what I can do to pick up numbers. Like, this is a game of numbers. And, luckily I'm a numbers guy. And, it's all incrementals. Like, after every pass, my stuff goes into a spreadsheet and it tells me my splits. I can see my drive shaft, my RPM, my boost, everything. So I can see how fast I get it in, where was I at on the track, at this point. And there's a lot of guys smarter than me, like Jamie and those guys. Like, those guys are smarter than me. But we're trying to do it with essentially our hand behind our back with these tiny engines. And I'm okay with that. I love it. Like, I love these engines. I think people don't understand their true ability and how hard it is to get these things to work.
Well, like, even like with you, I know you've done a lot of posting about like splits and stuff. Like, I don't do that math normally on my car, but I just don't really think about it that much. It's not super important to my program to calculate the splits. But you talking about the splits from the 330 to the 660 that's something that most people don't think about. And
honestly, I think the split that a lot of people, even more so than that, they don't talk about is the 60 foot to the 330, because that's where your ET is picked up.
Yeah,
your 60 foot counts. You pick up a couple numbers in the 60 foot, it's accelerating harder, but that front split is a lot.
Well, especially with
horsepower.
A faster car,
correct,
where you're trying to bring it in so much sooner. The 60 foot goes quick, and then you're got to really start.
Correct.
Your slip is almost moving a little bit.
Correct. Yeah. So the whole point of it is like, okay, so if I slide my 60 foot back, what am I going to do to my back split? Because if I just leave a little bit harder but keep the same ramp in, it might go a couple numbers faster to the front split, but it's not going to pick up much. If I hit it harder, go faster to the 60 foot, but I'm also ramping it in harder, it's going to go faster to the 330. And then from the 330 to the 660, it's horsepower. So how much horsepower do I have in it?
Yeah.
Just like your back split on a quarter mile. It's the back split's horsepower. That's why 2Js and GTRs and stuff, that's why they mile an hour so high, because and that's what a lot of people.
Garrett.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he'll go 230 at 640.
I think he's been like 236 or something.
Yeah, because his 60 foot is legitimately dog shit. Because essentially, and I get, like we've talked about why, but it's because he's getting a run at the track and people are like, oh, it's got so much mile an hour. Well, yeah, that's just horsepower. And they're figuring it out, but you got to run that thing hard down low, especially on the the small tire stuff and the 8th mile stuff. That front split is everything.
Yeah.
How fast you can accelerate to the 330 determines everything.
For people that don't know, we're talking, if you look at a time slip, there's the 60 foot, say mine's like a 113, and then the 330 is like maybe a 3.
What do you got, like 310, 320?
Yeah, it's like 310-ish. And then you subtract those numbers, and that's your split. So how fast you go from 60 feet to 330 feet.
Correct.
And, the time slip doesn't give you that metric, so you do these math, and then you do the same thing, 330 to 660.
Yep.
And you subtract those two numbers, and then you have those 2 extra numbers that most slips don't come with.
They don't come with that, correct.
But it's the nice increment that you get.
Yeah, and that's how we tune the car. So if I say I have all the horsepower that I'm willing to put into this car, and it's just not front splitting, it's not running the front half like I want it to. Well, I have a decision to make. Am I going to put a little bit more rear gear in it? Well, then how's that going to affect my back split? Because I'm going to be higher in the RPM. If I have room to grow, then I'm good. Well, I always match whatever RPM I want to go through the line. That's what rear gear I choose. So then your other option is to make a stator change. So it couples harder, lays the engine flat a little bit harder, so you can power through it. So the drive shaft, of course, will accelerate harder. So that's usually the go-to, for me at least. That's how I tune my car. Because if the converter if I put more power to it, and it takes the power, but if the power doesn't accelerate, then I know that the converter's just, I'm out of converter. I'm through that stator option that I have, in the converter at that time.
And if you don't do that calculation, you may overlook and just realize, oh, it's faster to the 660, it's faster 8th mile. I'm good.
Correct. And that's where a lot of guys, they just look at the time slip and they're like, oh, it went faster. Okay. I just put more power to it. And it's like, well, you're going to run more mile an hour if you put more power to it, because a lot of guys, they're doing like a 1.2, 1.5 boost curve. I'm all in at 0.8, like
nitrous car.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how, credit to, Nicky Notch is the one that originally years ago helped me.
That's my boy.
Yeah, Nicky, he's an awesome dude. He's the one that taught me how to read splits.
Yeah.
Because he used to run NMRA, used to tune Vinny Palazzolo's car.
Yep.
I raced a lot with him, and he taught me a lot how to break down a slip and and that's how he did it. He'd have notebooks of, at such and such time frame, the drive shaft curve, drive shaft speed, RPM curve was this. I need to go faster between this section, 0.6 and 1.0. I need to go faster there.
Yeah.
How do I do that? Power, is it traction? Whatever the case may be. Do I need to leave on more RPM so the engine is wicked up more so it can accelerate harder? Like 50 RPM on a launch is a lot with these cars. Mm-hmm. People don't think it is, but that's a lot because you're getting that engine up into that next little cloud of horsepower. That little, it's like a little delta there that will hit the converter differently. It will hit especially in the turbo car. It'll let you got more shaft speed in the turbine, so you're going to bring the boost in harder. So the engine's up in VE faster. So there's a lot of things that a lot of people just look at a slip and be like, yeah, I went 670s at 215, awesome.
Well, a lot of cars too. 50 RPM doesn't even translate because they get up on the two-step, it's like, pop, 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 pop. Yeah. And it's variation between like 300 RPM variation, and you're like, well, you have no control.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to keep that two-step.
That when you let off the button, it's kind of in your sweet spot.
Correct, yeah. And like if you listen to my car, you listen to Brett's, like they're flatlined. Like
they
Brett's,
do like that three-step type of stuff.
Yeah, like the Motec's got a little bit more control than Holly, so Brett's is a little bit more flatline, like it's like a real constant drone almost.
It gets up and then it kind of tucks back down.
Yep, yeah, like I overshoot 400 to 500 to get shaft speed, knock it all out, then I yank the timing out, and then that's when it's, you get shaft speed.
It's a beautiful sound on the... I know they don't call it three-step all the time.
No, it depends on how you do it, yeah.
Yeah, some people call it launch something.
So mine's like an overshoot. Like a three-step is, depending on who you talk to, a three-step, a lot of times it's if you can't spool a turbo. So say you have a two-step at like 4,500. Yeah. So it starts popping and banging there, and then once that starts popping and banging, it meets a boost threshold, then it'll raise it to say 4,800, 500.
Well, Joel Granis and Delgado... the orange Supra, their car does a very similar thing, and they're trying to spool two turbos. Yeah. Kind of in a weird, not location, but in a weird series,
Correct.
They spool this little turbo, and then you hear a big turbo
start to wind up, yeah.
You're just like, oh, that's tame, and then it's just like the big one just gets lit.
Yeah, and it's just just a massive fireball. But yeah, like I said, every combination is different, and how you have to run it is different, and that's where... what Brett and I do, what I do may not work in Brett's car. What we do may not work in somebody else's car. But they're very, very similar as far as with the little engine stuff because we're cubic inch limited. So we have to, especially when you don't have the lockup. The lockup helps a lot because with the lockup I don't have to worry about my back, the backside of the run because I know it's going to be 1-to-1. Should everything work properly? Yeah, I know it's going to be 1-to-1.
Well, you do soft lockup and hard lockup too.
Yeah.
So there's even that whole variation of how you want to bring it in.
Correct. And when you want to bring it in, like mine has a safety that if I bring it in too early and it starts dragging the end backwards, it's going to kick it off. Yeah. So so that way.
And you probably base that off of G meter as well.
Correct.
Because my transbuilder Jason ATF was telling me He's like, man, you don't know how many people I talk to that they're like, man, the lockup came on and it was just rolling. And he's like, yeah, but it was actually losing G's after you hit lockup. You just thought it was going really fast. Yeah, you just
felt it. Yeah, they felt it load the engine.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually accelerating at a faster rate.
He's like, people do that all the time. And they're like, you have to look at the data, not just the seat of your pants.
And that's where, to censor out these cars, people don't understand what the amount of sensors. Like I said, like we were talking about before, 2 weeks ago, just talking with Doug and, talking with Dalton, became a dealer for Rife and TBM and, and then the decision was made, well, let's just sensor the whole car out. And I had no issues with the sensor. I was running some Holley sensors, some Load All Motorsports, and I had no issues with them. They've been fine.
Yeah.
But, I wanted to work with Doug. And, he was, amazing to me, through the whole process. And I've known Doug for years. And like I said, but looking at the data just from on the hub dyno, like the sensors are much clearer. Like they really are.
Yeah.
It's, and
less noise in them.
Correct. Yeah. And even when they're sitting there, you can tell when they're sitting there, you don't have a lot of variation. You don't have to kick a lot of offsets in them to zero them out and so on and so forth. So, but when you pay attention to that, like that makes a difference.
Yeah.
All that makes a difference as far as, how far my shocks are going. Like the difference of good data and bad data is a couple clicks of the shock that I might not have needed that are going to overextend and waste leverage.
Well, these cars are getting so fast now that we're talking
everything.
Like thousandths of a second variation on IATs doing something slow moving. Anything slow moving in an ECU that's a crutch.
Yep.
So even, if ECUs can keep up and they have enough resolution, it's going to become more of an issue.
Correct.
If they can log things fast enough and if they can handle that many sensors.
Some of them, they might be able to take it, but that doesn't mean they're going to process it.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that you run into with some of these ECUs. And I mean, the Holley's been good. I haven't had any issues with it.
Yeah.
It's got a really good processor.
Like an industrial
correct
deal.
Yeah. It does very, very well. Like I have no issues and as fast as I wanted to, log it and so on and so forth. So I have no issues there. But yeah, we pull a lot of data back, but I use it. I look at every channel in between rounds.
Yeah.
You have to. I'm using everything. Even if I'm just checking to make sure it had oil pressure, checking to make sure it had fuel pressure, all that stuff. These guys, they come back from their run and they're just chilling and hanging out and stuff like that. And it's just like, man, you want to go faster, look at your data. Because it's going to tell you everything you need to know.
And I've said it before, hanging out with Brett and spending time with them and racing with those guys makes me realize what level I want to step up to.
Yes.
And it's okay to, maybe I'm telling myself this, but it's okay to realize I don't actually want to be at that level where I have 3 spare transmission center sections like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm good on that.
Yeah, it's
not for everyone.
No, it's really not for everyone. I do it because it's my business.
Yep.
And I love it. And that's the biggest thing is I'm very, very passionate about drag racing.
I've spent a lot of time with Red. With LDR,
yep. Red's
and hanging out in his pits,
dude.
and man, he goes through a lot. He puts in a ton of work.
Yep.
Even when he gets there and sets up, I'm like, oh man.
Oh yeah, it's a couple hours to set up.
Yeah, he's got tables out. He's got transmission build table. He's got gutter system that he just had to put up. The grill,
everything.
It's like a whole thing in itself, and it's awesome. I love to be a part. I love to be around it.
Yeah, because you're just I'm not. This isn't, and it's not for everybody. It's
at that level.
No, and like we talked earlier, is you have to be under the realization and the understanding that you are going to tear stuff up. There's just no way. I don't care if it's billet, if it's cast, if it's brand new, if it's used, you're gonna tear stuff up, and there's no way around it. And people get upset. Because, I spent all this money on this engine or on this transmission or on this build. Because let's be honest, it's $250,000 to $300,000 to build a competitive car.
Yeah.
That's roughly what it costs. By the time you start with a chassis or, a roller and you build it out with labor.
Just to build before you even make it down the track.
Yes. And that's the thing is, that's no truck, trailer, spares, no nothing. That's just, here's your car.
You've never made it down the track yet.
Exactly, yeah. But that's what it takes to build these competitive cars.
And guess what? Once you're done, it's not just I'm going to go run it for the next 4 years.
No. No
more surprise bills.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. And that's what when I go back, I'll start getting everything out. I'll go over the car, make sure it's all good, go through what tune-up I want to put in it for tomorrow morning for testing, and just get ready. I'm not going to go back and just chill or just relax or do what. It's just that same thing is, you walk past Brett's pit, he's on the laptop talking with Joe, he's talking with those guys, they're changing tires, whatever the case may be. It never stops.
It's kind of why I even said, that's why I like doing this, because the guys that race at that level, you can't go bullshit with them for 2 hours in the pit.
No.
So, I kind of get them to have these conversations in a different setting, because as much as they maybe would... they're not being mean when you go up and talk to them.
No, we're just busy.
They just got a lot of shit to do.
Yep. And you can't afford to miss anything.
Yeah.
Usually if I'm at a racetrack, the only time I'll talk to people is usually when I'm in the lanes. Mm-hmm. And that's just because I've already done what I needed to do. It's ready to go. I'm just going to go make a pass.
I've seen Pete Harrell, Garrett's tuner at World Cup, he goes up to there, sits on the starting line. He takes notes. He builds the tune-up looking at the starting line.
Yep.
Like, he's hanging out at the starting line for a bunch of passes. He's not just
see what's going on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what was it, 2 years ago, Brett and I both spun first round. Pete went back and made a tune-up change in Cletus, because Cletus won that year.
You can't just have blinders on. You got to pay attention to what's going on.
And that's like I said, that's that it's a blessing and a curse to for number one qualifier, because it's like, we went up there, everything was perfect all weekend, did everything right.
Yep. And
just misread. I missed it. I turned it down a little bit, to just go like a 670 or whatever, and I missed it. And it happens. Like, you're going to lose a lot more rounds than you win. And that's just when you can come to that realization that you do it for fun, like I do it for fun, but also I do it because I love it and I make a good living doing these.
Let me take 5. So it's funny you were talking about Nicky Notch. So me and him go way back.
That's right, because you're from up there. That's right.
He, my parents own a small business on Long Island in Montauk, and he was the UPS driver since I was like a kid. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
Just years, and he was just the UPS driver. And then I started kind of going around drag racing more. And then, like, I moved to Florida, and then I got into drag racing. And then I started getting into, like, radial stuff. And I was like, what the heck? Like, it was just kind of like, wait, that was just the UPS driver. Yep. I didn't think that he was, like, this badass, like...
He's a very smart dude.
Like a badass tuner, car builder, setup, like, making big stuff work and running with... everyone. I don't know. It's just like, it was such a funny thing to hear. Yeah,
Nicky's probably one of the coolest dudes that I've ever met in drag racing. He's kind of like slowed down and kind of got out of it and stuff. But
he's always had the good UPS job, cushy deal, you know.
Yeah, he just did this for fun, and I think it was for like race car money and stuff like that. Yeah. But he was good at it because Nicky understood same way. He understood the breakdown. He understood that you can't, you're not trying to go from 430 to a 415. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You may get lucky and just catch one, but, for the most part, it's not going to happen. You got to go 429. You got to go 420, 27 or 22. Yeah. You got to increment it. And like I said, that's where success is, like you listen to Jamie and Petty and those guys talk, and they're talking like 1-2 numbers all the time. Like, we just got to pick up one number right now, and people that are on the outside or don't understand, they're like, well, you want a 68. Shouldn't you be swinging for like a 62 or a 60? It's like, no, we want to go 67. Or
the guys that make the rules.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you know what I mean?
John Sears.
Yes, yeah. Where's John Sears at?
Yeah.
He's probably on his way down. But yeah, it's like people don't get is it's very tough. It's hard. It's challenging. But when you love it and you put that effort in, and then it makes it all worth it, just like anything when it pays off.
Well, at that level, it's easy to go from a 540 car to a 50. That's not that crazy.
Correct.
If you have a car that makes some power.
Yep.
Like if you got a turbo that'll make some power.
Yep.
It's not that hard to make a swing like that.
Correct.
But once you get down to the deep into the 4s, into the 14s, getting those numbers on tough. A car like this, these full body cars are all around 3,000-ish pounds.
Correct. Between 28 to 3,000 pounds is your average race car.
If you see a car with a factory roof, it's probably about that.
Correct. Yeah, like your average small tire car, whether it be X to Ultra, is going to be between 28 to 3,200. Because some combos in Ultra are a little bit heavier. Same way with X. Some combos in X275 are a little bit heavier. And
just getting the weight out of them, it doesn't really...
Yeah, like you have to spend a lot of time to get the weight out. Then you got guys that go buy titanium bolts and all that nonsense. Like, you're out of your mind.
Well, that's the Ultra Street car that James drives.
Yeah.
Gonzo.
Yeah. Like, that combo, if you're maxed out, then I guess that's your only other option.
He's got so much into titanium bolts.
It's insane.
You could be like, Gonzo, how much do your lug nuts weigh right now?
He knows. Yeah. And that's it. So to run nitrous, I think you have to be a different breed of gentleman. It's a different breed of people.
Like, he can add, like, if you're like, hey, we need like 4 ounces on the nose, he can add that.
Yeah.
Ounces.
That's ridiculous. And that's the thing is, like, And that comes to data. That comes to he knows what his car weighs. He knows what he needs to do. Like Manny told me one time, the difference between like a 72, 372 and a 368 was 10 pounds on the nose of the car, of Fred, his red Pro 275 car. That was it. It's like, and people, you tell somebody that, they're like, what? It's like, yeah, you could run it harder down low, keep the nose down, and it'll accelerate harder. And when you tell your average person, even in your average drag race, they're like, that's only 4 numbers. It shouldn't be that hard. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, well, that's a lot of horsepower.
Yeah, I was talking to Lyle a little bit about that, and like when they put the Pro Chargers way out front on those Pro mods, versus you put a big supercharger up high.
Yep.
That's changing a lot.
Oh yeah, it changes your center of gravity. The blower cars, they can run them a little bit harder down low too, because you got free downforce. Mm-hmm. So whereas a turbo car will want to, once you really start getting after it in some of those high horsepower turbo cars, they want to wheelie. So unless it's making an insane amount of horsepower, then you can use the downforce. Like we watched my car on the hub dyno the other day, and I have 11 gauge, like good race part solution, 11 gauge aluminum downpipes, and it's making. Even that little motor's making the downforce, and it's bending the bullhorns.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize which way they point their exhaust.
It makes a difference. And that's why NHRA, there's a rule, I believe. I'm almost positive there's a rule what pitch the zoomies can be, because they can use it to accelerate and keep the nose down. So there's like a happy medium they make them live in.
Yeah, I've loved to see more testing on some of the turbo stuff, because it's always funny too, because people are like, yeah, like a supercharger car is making a bunch of force, but your turbo car is not. It's like, well, it's still moving the same amount of air.
I see
3,000 horsepower of air
it's still
3,000 horsepower of air. It's an air pump.
Correctly. Yeah, exactly. You need so much air and so much fuel to make such horsepower.
Yeah.
You'll see guys with turbo cars that have them like straight out. It's like, man, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
Especially like a single turbo car that's got just one out the side, like a 5-inch out the side. It's like, man, like at least do dual 4s or something.
I think there was a 2J car a while ago that like it started to push towards the wall.
Correct. Yep.
Like they were having trouble with
it. A lot of the rotaries fight that.
Yeah.
That stuff. Because those things are just popping and banging. Like, I don't know how it just doesn't, when they're popping and banging at World Cup, I don't know how it just doesn't just throw them up against the wall or up against the tree if they're in the left lane.
It kind of does sometimes.
Yeah, inadvertently.
Yeah, they do some weird stuff.
Dude, those things are so sketchy to race against. Because you don't know where they're going. They're just an out-of-control roller skate.
You really want to be out in front of that car.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never want to be with one.
No.
Or behind it. Behind it, maybe because you could see it coming.
Maybe.
But still, you don't want to see it coming. But yeah, you don't want to be beside or right along with one of those ones.
You want to get out on that car.
Yeah. And they have like, probably I would say, and it's not to shit on them, but it's probably like a 35 to 40% chance they're getting down the whole way. And I get it. It's a short wheelbase, big tire. It goes square. Like you'll see them blow the back windows out and stuff like that. Like those things are sketchy. Like, they say they sit with their balls on the rear end of those cars, because you do. Like those things are so sketchy. You couldn't pay me to drive one of those things.
No, it's so small.
Yeah, it's so short.
To go quarter mile
so
in
violent.
that thing?
Yeah. Like every gear change is just back up, because it's like this long. So.
And they kind of like offset the wheelie bars weird, so it kind of like rides them nicely.
It rides them as it's all twisted up.
Yeah.
Those guys are something. And they're fast. I mean, those little things are fast. And, one of the, like I said earlier, one of the things that we're not worried about, but, like getting bumped to the next class, like when you go faster, you get bumped.
Didn't that happen to Garrett?
Yeah,
everybody was pretty mad about that one.
Yeah, and I understood
his fan base was mad.
His fan base was mad, but everybody else that understood racing, not to say his fan base doesn't, but
most don't understand class racing.
Yeah, so like that's an LDR combo. That's a billet block, billet head, LDR combo.
Bigger turbos than LDR would allow.
Exactly, yeah, because he had 94. So that
with
combo, you're not even allowed to lock up in LDR. So like that's more of a Pro 275 combo. That combo should go 360s, 370s.
And that's how Jason Miller has to look at it.
Correct. He can't say, "Oh well, since it's in an El Camino that is a battleship, I got to let it slide." You can't do that. That's an LDR combo with a lockup. It's got to go up, and I get it, and
because a motivated individual could read that rule and suddenly be not that Garrett's not, but somebody that has a similar combo in 275. Put it in a Fox
body. Yeah. You put that combo in a Fox body, and you know, and with a good tuner, not that Pete's a very good tuner, but I mean, just like you get a good tuner and you have all the pieces in place, like that's a 370s car. That car's going to go 560s out the back.
Because you got to look at what a combo's potential is, not what the car has done.
Correct. And that's what Jason has to do. And that's the same way with like now that me and Brett are, you know, or 4.0s and, you know, we're going to start creeping down to 610, 6.0s in the quarter. Like I get, he wants to keep that class of 630, 640s.
It's hard to rule you guys out though.
I know, especially because I'm
stock block,
and I'm a Warriors car.
Yeah.
I won't fit into Warriors class. But hey,
small turbos.
Yeah, I'm running 8396s. He's running 8385s.
Yeah,
like we're.
I think
he's got the 83s back on.
Okay.
Yeah, he said the other one. Yeah,
okay.
I guess the other ones weren't.
Okay, I was gonna say because
he did have 86s. Yeah,
he had the 86s for the next gens because I have 186.
Yeah,
he
had two. Yeah, and I've tried the 88s, and honestly, the 83s were faster across the bottom. Now I will get the 88s to go faster because we just did a couple test sessions with them. But for me, what I want to do, the 83 is perfect.
Yeah,
you know I haven't closed the gates on those things yet. I mean, they're not even 1-to-1 at 52 pounds of boost.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for rules, I don't envy people that make the rules.
No, Jason's got a tough job. John Sears, God bless him.
Man,
I love that guy. Like him and I will have conversations all the time about these guys that just bitch. Like, because I told him, like, I'll just go and race anyway. If I fit a class, I'm gonna I'm literally racing 3 different classes the next 3 weekends because I can make my car fit. I'm not gonna ask for a special caveat. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go and race.
Well, he kind of fell into a thankless job.
Oh, 100%.
You know, like it was at a necessity that racing needed him, and he was just like, oh, well.
I'm guessing I'm going to retire from racing and go. Yeah.
And nobody's nice to you.
No. And I couldn't imagine the DMs he gets.
Yeah.
Like probably just all day, every day. Is he just probably just trying to go to sleep or probably just relax with his wife? And you got just some crybaby that wants 25 pounds off because some combo went
and
a little bit faster.
And they can't go as fast as the guy that has the same combo.
Yes.
But we need 25 pounds off, even though a guy's going faster than me.
That's the hardest part. His hardest job is he has to decipher what's real and what's bullshit. Mm-hmm. And same way with Jason. Like, you get some of the Tres Cuarto guys is they will suck in qualifying, and then they'll come out and go 660s.
Yep.
So you have to really watch those guys because you might get up against a car that went 880s in qualifying, and you're like, oh, okay, I can turn this thing down, and that dude will go 660s on you. You gotta be really careful. And like I said, I get Jason wants to keep it because some of those cars are supposedly at their max potential to be able to try to go a 40 out the back, but at the same time, it's like like I told him, like Brett and I we have our combination figured out. It's just we have found the efficiency of it. Like 3 years ago, if you told me I go 619, I'd be like, no, I was going 650s then and hurting it. And now it'll go 619, 621, 619, 620s. Mm-hmm. It within a matter of a couple hours, back to back.
Well, even this past year, I kind of got a kick out of, I think, was it Ronnie Rhodes that won?
Ultra, yeah, whatever the Ultra, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even think he was leaning on that car.
Was not.
I was like, I think he lifted at like 1,000 feet every pass.
Yeah, you see the candles go out. Yeah, you see the candles go out.
I was like, there was some rule parity issue, and that'll happen. You'll miss,
and you learn.
Yeah,
yeah. So Jason can make that adjustment for next year, and it sucks because people are like, oh, he should have caught it.
He drove through that class.
Oh my God, yeah. And Ronnie's, I mean, him and his.
Well, he's got more laps than probably the whole field on that car.
Yeah, because they live at Cecil.
Yeah,
they literally live at Cecil.
And then on top of that,
he should have stake probably in Cecil's property rights
but
at this point.
I mean, both of those cars are awesome. The Rhodeses have awesome
badass
cars.
Yeah.
But to see it run through the whole class,
it's pretty wild. Yeah. And that's the thing is people don't get it. It's just like you can't see everything coming. Like I didn't see my 619 coming. It was that when we found something that morning and we put it together. And I found that next, it's kind of like, I don't know if you're into ballistics and stuff like that, like shooting, like you find that next accuracy node in your load data. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, I found that, my engine wasn't efficient down here, or it didn't seem like it was efficient at 40 to 45 pounds of boost, but I put 50 to it and it came alive. Like it accelerated harder. It loves it. It's living. Panvac is, nothing up top. And it's just like, this doesn't make sense because I wasn't happy with it. And it's a combination of it may not have been, the converter might not have been happy at that power level. So it's tough to say.
But that's where the small hammer kind of comes in.
Exactly.
Little swing here and there, little swing.
Exactly.
People that make big swings and then like it didn't work and then another big swing.
And it doesn't work.
And it doesn't work. And then it's like, I guess I'll just make another big swing.
Well, that's the same thing. It's like my combo, I've had the same combination for 6 or 7 years. Like I have not switched. I've had those turbos. I've had that 5.4 platform. My cone transmission, my first cone that they sponsored me on, that thing is 7 years old. That Turbo 400, 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's had one set of clutches in it, and that's only because I felt bad because I wasn't freshening it up.
Yeah.
But it's never been back to cone. Like, I slid clutches.
Amazing how strong clutches are.
They're amazing, especially when you get, like, the blues. Like, they're, like, $30-$40 a piece. But those Alto blues, man, those things are bad.
Even my Power Glide, like, I've broken a couple things in the Power Glide. Clutches have always looked
Yep. As long as you got good line pressure and if ATF's building your stuff, they build amazing transmissions.
Yeah, Jason knows more about transmissions than I think most people do.
Yeah, he's a very, very smart dude. I buy some parts from him and stuff all the time. And you can't, like, having a good transmission guy is hard to find. Like, I like Jason at Cone, Proformance, Dave up at Proformance builds awesome. I'm actually I'm going to be sending one of my lockups back to him because I want some changes. It's an M&M that I bought from that Party Time Racing, PDRA, Justin Harris. I bought it off of him, and I had sent it back to Mark and got an internal dump and stuff. But I want some changes. Like, I want to do things a little bit differently to try to make it more efficient of what I'm used to running. Just so it fits into my program. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Mark builds a badass transmission, but I want it more personalized for what I want, and Dave's willing to do that.
Yeah, finding people that are willing to work with your program is what I always tell people all the time too. Because I get people that'll just like DM me, "What ECU should I put in my car?" Well, who's tuning it?
Exactly.
Like who's like?
Yeah. Do you have the ability to even understand and decipher the data so you can even talk to your tuner if he's not there?
Like who? Like that's like the key. Like, don't talk to me. Talk to your freaking tuner.
Yes.
Like, why would you go to me?
Yep.
Like, talk to Alpha. Talk to Induction. The guys that I work with.
I make people get mad because I'm very, very honest with people. I have somebody that, hey man, what parts should I use? Well, that's up to your engine builder. Well, I haven't selected one. Well, if you'd like a quote, I'll get you a quote. But I'm not going to give you free data. I'm sorry, that's just not how this works. I'm not going to tell you, hey, I know what combinations of parts worked all in unison and are happy together. That I'm not just going to give you that information for you to take to your buddy down the street because you don't want to pay me, and that's fine. You don't want to pay me. I'm okay with that. Like I've learned one thing I've learned is like you don't want all the customers.
Yep.
Like I have a very good customer base. We build 45 to 50 engines a year, and I'm okay with that. I don't want any more because I have a life. I have another, it's not my full-time job. I mean, it's full-time and full-time, but
it's just 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah, it's just 2 full-time jobs, but that's how I'm able to to do this. Because
I've heard Victor say the same thing. He's like, I'll fire a customer.
Dude, I've done it a lot, unfortunately. And they were customers that I loved. Like a lot of customers have turned into friends, but then some try to take advantage of that. Unfortunately, it's like, well, hey, can you do this for me? Or, when you own your own business, you work a lot for free. Like I probably, with all my customer stuff between it, because I'm a one-man band. Besides, I partner with the machine shop. But other than that, I'm a one-man band. I'm the accountant. I'm invoicing. I'm buying parts, everything. Every weld, everything, every nut and bolt. And I like it that way because I'm in control of everything. But at the same time, it's like, you work at night for 3 to 4 hours a night for free. You don't get paid for ordering, gathering up parts for a build. You don't get paid for, having to do your, you got to do your taxes because you got to pay the man.
Everything's not a billable hour.
Exactly.
A lawyer.
Yeah. Or like, I got to go get hardware. Like, I'm not going to charge the customer 45 minutes to go down to the hardware store.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay for the bolts, and unfortunately, I'm going to eat the labor. So you try to mix it. Okay, I got to go pick up my daughter from school, so I'll try to get bolts then. It's the kind of thing. That's just the way you got to do it.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
All business life. I mean,
but it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding when you don't have to get up and listen to anybody. Like I've had really good bosses. I worked in the oil field. I've had really, really amazing bosses, but man, working for myself, it's amazing. And then like I said, I do consulting on the electrical engineering side, and I get to do what I want.
What is on the electrical engineering side then? What's that exactly?
So I was in the oil and gas for 8 years. Before that, I was in the steel mill. Oil and gas, I did.
That's Pennsylvania. Makes sense.
Like controls, high power, high voltage substation design, and so forth. And then now I worked with the Navy for the past year, doing some stuff on their new fleet of ships. And then now I'll be working with some companies doing some alternative power production, like one of them's like they turn pig shit into electricity.
Some kind of like methane type of deal.
Correct. Yeah. They'll reclaim the gas off of that and power the turbine and so forth off of that. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, I get to do a little bit of everything.
Yep.
And then I have that engineering mindset. Like everything's black and white to me. There is no gray.
It's funny because John Lund.
Correct.
Very similar.
I love John.
Same area as you, Pennsylvania engineering. Yep. Like he was working for like Godiva chocolate or something. I think.
Yep. I love the Lund boys. I've gone down. Going down. I stay in senior's house. Amazing people. I love junior and senior both. They're awesome.
It's just funny. There's a strong connection there.
Yep.
I was like, it's like the same background almost.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where I think it helps because it helps. Like you said, you have to. These cars are engineered. Whether you think they are or not, you have to engineer these cars. Like you said, you're messing with how I'm manipulating the transmission fluid. What am I doing as far as the engine? How am I running the engine?
Yep.
Whether it's timing, there's two ways to run it. You can run it fat with a lot of timing. You can run it leaner with less timing. And it just depends on who's tuning it and how you want to run the car. And you run it different in different situations.
I always imagine like one of those like SpaceX engineers or something like bringing them like to a car and being hey, like this is what's going on here. They'd probably be like, oh, cool. Like we can do all that. Like,
it's
you know what I mean? Like if you get like an engineer like that, one of those like extreme high functioning data
they can figure
engineers.
It out. Yeah, and like I love having conversations like this. I love having conversations with Brett and Jim and Nikki and all those guys that understand this stuff because it makes us better and we share knowledge. Like I'm not afraid to share it with guys that in the industry that I respect. Because I know that we're having a good, meaningful conversation, and it's for the better.
Well, if both of you guys had this problem, you had that problem, suddenly neither of you guys have to have that problem because you both figured it out. So you could both take a step forward without having to both figure it out.
Correct. Yeah, and these cars, you run into minuscule, the dumbest things will take you out.
Yeah.
Like the absolute dumbest thing. Like like one of the reasons I carry all these spares. I was down here 5 years ago at NMRA spring break. And a $4 fitting, I had an oil line break, and I didn't have a $4 fitting. And I told myself, this is the last time anything like that will happen. And now I have, if I order a fitting, I order two. Like I'm known, like I'm like the, I don't know if you know, like they call it Woody Mart, like because Mark Woodruff has so many spares. I'm like the poor version of Woody Mart is what I call myself.
Yeah.
Because like I have a lot, but he's got a lot.
I've been there too. I was under my car one time. I was tightening the transmission line and just snapped the little aluminum fitting off the and there's the shitty little aluminum fittings on my trans.
Yep.
Should probably go to something else, but like
and it's just like, well, like stuff like that, like
and you're laying in the grass and then you're just like, God damn it.
This is how it ends. Yep. And stuff like
Q1's in 40 minutes. Like
how am I gonna figure this out?
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what I said, like, before we ran that 619 pass, 45 minutes before I went that pass at World Cup this year, my car didn't have a transmission in it. Because we went to spool it, and long story short, I set my steering wheel down on my car's double frame rail. So I set my steering wheel down on a double frame rail, and the ignition was on. It melted the wire because the transmission it hit the trans brake button, so it melted right at the connector. It just sat there with the solenoid on for so long, just pulling an overcurrent, and just the wire became the fuse at that point. So I went to spool it. Smacked the throttle, and it actually destroyed the clutches in forward.
Oh, wow.
So we went to fire it up the next morning and went to put it on two-step, and I had no forward gears. And like I said, it's like 45 minutes before we're getting called to lanes. So we hurry up, get the transmission out, swap everything over, and I was like, well, I'm going to have to hit this thing a little bit harder because I went from a 170 first gear to a 151. So we hit it a little bit harder, and the car loved it. So that was just that thing we found that day that now I know the car wants to be loaded and rolled over at a certain RPM and wants to, you know, how we run out first gear. It's just that's what it wants. But before that, I was trying to run it, you know, much differently. And it was still going fast. Don't get me wrong. I'd been 409 before that. But to go from 409 to 405 in quarter mile trim while taking first gear away, show me that, you know, that I found something there.
Doing that in quarter mile trim is super impressive.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize that. Again, we're talking about different trims and you switching over your car to then also do it in quarter mile trim.
Yeah, it's hard.
Is insane.
Yeah. Like I've been faster in quarter mile trim, and it's mostly because
right place, right time.
It's the right place, right time. Yeah. So like this
good
weekend,
air, good DA.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, you know, the air's good up at World Cup, but what a lot of people don't understand, and I know Brett had said this on his video after World Cup, is the track isn't that great.
It's not radial prep.
It's good, but it's not great because it's that mix. So the slicks don't go square on, you know, and they don't roll over and drive over the slick. But it's not that great.
Yeah, it's not radial prep. It's not BMP. It's not what Wade puts down.
Correct. Yeah, you got to really watch it. Like if I had that air in Florida, we could go really fast.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Really? Yeah. Between you want those two, and even like Cecil, like. We're gonna run at Cecil in a couple weeks, and Cecil is an amazing track. What Jim, like we were talking earlier, what Jim is doing up there, like all these owners, I love it. They're all stepping up.
Yeah,
it's so awesome to see. Like that I can race at Cecil, I can race MDIR, I can race down here, I can race SGMP, I can race at Steel.
Steel's doing a lot more. I was talking to somebody else about that the other day.
Track.
Steel is really ramping up. Their radial racing.
It's sketchy because I've never been on a track that. So right past the 8th mile, it just goes like this. It is the first time I made a hit, I was like, well, I'm just going to ease it on down through here. Went like a 414 or something. And I was like, I'm just going to ease it on down through here, pop both chutes because I don't know what's out here.
Yeah.
Even though we drove it, it's different when you're going 185 mile an hour. So yeah, it's a quarter mile track. So I don't know how they run quarter mile because it just does this. So... But it's fast. The track, like the surface was good. Now it had rained the night before the last qualifier, so a lot of people were spinning during the day because it rained, so the water got under the track. They had to completely scrape, and they were trying to rebuild that surface. But once I got the surface built back up, just like here, it's fast.
Yeah, and that's also that kind of separates the tracks too. How good can they rebuild it?
Yeah, because and how fast they can get it.
Yeah,
because some it may take a day. Of racing on it. Some they can get it back in a couple hours.
Yep.
And it's weather dependent. It's moisture in the air. There's so many factors, but the good ones like Wade, and like Jason and those guys like
even Raul up at
Raul's
SGMP.
Awesome.
He just bought that. He's new owner there, which is cool to see. Fresh blood in a track.
Yep. And I love the fact that he was a racer because he was like a grudge racer. And I know him from Mod Motor days and stuff. And I've raced. I didn't race a lot with him, but I raced at the same events, and I talked to Raul a lot. He's a really good, solid dude, and it's awesome to see what he's doing to that track.
Yeah.
And like I said, and what Victor's doing down here, man, you could, like you guys, I'm sure but how fortunate you are to have BMP this close.
Oh, it's insane. That's why, like, me and my wife, we just, even if my car is not running, we'll just go to BMP.
Yeah, because you're going to see something.
We'll go hang out. We'll go be part of the crowd.
Yep.
Because, like, that too is like, if you go to a track and there's, 80 people walking around just on a random night.
Yep.
It's a lot better than if there's just like 10,
Correct.
15.
Yeah. And that shows the support, I know Victor, he appreciates that, but Victor's putting in the work, and like, you got to commend the guy, whether it's the facility, he's spending a lot of money to put blacktop in, or he's, like we talked, he's talking shit online to get people to the race. Like, come race me,
Well, they had a funny car go 345 miles an hour, whatever it was.
Insane. And that's something to hang his hat on. Like he deserves that.
You could hear him from here.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I could hear him.
What is it like? What is it? The way the crow flies?
It's like 15 miles, 10
that what
miles. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, you could hear him.
That's insane.
I know. I sit out there and you're. And they never shift gears or anything. They just kind of
just
drive right through as the clutches grab.
Yeah, it just sounds like a go-kart.
Yep.
It's going down to it. Yeah, those things are...
Just like a buzz.
Yeah, that level of racing's insane.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense.
No. Financially, it doesn't make any sense either. Because even if you win, you still lose.
Well, at least they were winning like 250.
Yeah, that race, something like that.
Yeah, that's nice. But normally
it was like 40, 50 grand. Well,
Yeah.
it's like what, like 10, 15 grand a pass?
Joke.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that's the problem with a lot
When
of these
I was
sanctioning
watching
bodies.
them throw sleeves, full just sleeves in the engine, in the trash. Just
Yeah.
like the sleeve, pull it out, toss it.
Yeah. Sleeves, pistons.
Yeah, I got that piston from
Oh,
there.
that's from Clay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, you know, like stuff like that. It's just like the level, like people can't comprehend that. Well, they're going to throw that piston away?
It doesn't look used.
No. But it's probably knocked out around.
Yeah.
You know, whether the skirts collapse, whatever it may be. And that's the thing is like,
Worth not using.
yeah, exactly. They're not going to put it in an engine and to where it causes a catastrophic failure.
Yeah.
Like, so like I said, the fact that Victor put his money, he puts his money where his mouth is. I mean, I will give him that. And that's why I drove, like I told him, you know, when I was talking to him about coming, I said, man, like, I love what you're doing and I'm willing to make this trip.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a long haul to come race for 2 days. Like I'm like I said, I'm driving longer than I'm going to be racing, but it's worth it to me.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'm glad you came on, man. I'm glad you came down. Let's wrap this up. How can people become a customer? Because
It's Wonder Racing LLC, Facebook.
Wonder Racing LLC. I'll put everything in the description as I always do.
On Instagram, Facebook, and then my personal page is Keith Ray. And then, like I said, I love doing this. I love working with people and making their cars fast.
I love to hear it, man. This was a lot of fun. This was super cool. Next time you're back, maybe we'll do a group deal because I want to try to do some of those too, where we fill all 4 seats with racers,
awesome.
and we can kind of do like.
I'll be back down for FL2K.
Good deal. Well, thanks for coming on, man. This was a lot of fun, guys. Go check them out if you need any mod motor parts or a niche group of people looking for mod motor stuff. So go check them out. But that'll do, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.